City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for February 26th, 2018. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Zachary Urban.
Present.
Denise Hoppy.
Present.
George Pond.
Present.
Monica Duran.
Here.
Christy Davis.
Here.
Tim Fitzgerald.
Here.
Larry Matthews.
Present.
Leah Dozeman.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Councilors, you have two sets of minutes, one for the study session notes of February 5th, 2018, and the special study session notes of January 22nd, 2018. If there are no corrections, we will record the minutes as approved as presented. They're approved as presented. We do not have any proclamations and ceremonies tonight. We are going to move into citizens' right to speak. Our first speaker is Dorothy Archer and Raleigh Sorrentino on deck.
My name is Dorothy Archer, 3640 Marshall Street. Good evening, Mayor Starker and council and staff. I may have to readdress my thoughts as I just found out about the survey. How many people received the survey? Can I find that out? How many?
Information about it?
About 3,000.
How many?
3,000.
I can't believe I didn't get one.
It hasn't come out yet. It hasn't come out yet.
It hasn't come out yet.
We're just...
Okay, I'm reading the part that you are addressing on the height. Nowhere did you talk about a bulk plank, about a flat roof. Also, I need something cleared. Do people realize that houses are being picked up, scraped, and right next door these are being built? Sometimes this is not made very clear. The last survey you did online, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said, I don't get it. What are you talking about? This is and this isn't clear.
Ms. Archer, if the survey is on our study session tonight, so that would be the more appropriate time to talk about the study session. If you'd like to
it bumped what I had to say first. I didn't even know about this until tonight. So, I'm addressing the situation. Is this kind of a survey going to bump me asking for somebody to make a motion to study this further? Are you going to wait for this survey to come back and then decide whether or not you're going to open this up again? I'm so serious, I can't begin to tell you. We are the only remaining city that still has a 35-foot allowance. Why? What is this all about? Are we going to protect the people who are here, who have given their lives to their homes? You talk about R1 in East Wheat Ridge. Do you know how many homes, doorbells I rang and saw how these people have sunk major money into remodeling these bungalows and these ranches to only have a house 2 doors down? Torn down? Mr. Mann is building 3310 and 3320 Chase. 2-year specifications, 35 feet with a 15-foot bulk plane. Take a look at it next to the little ranches. It is not acceptable. We have got to get this straight. Edgewater has changed. Mountain View has nothing. I told you before, I already talked to Arvada. It is in great study. They are realizing now this is not okay. Golden is down to 30 feet, and so is Denver. What is the matter with this picture? I hate to think I have to drag petitions, get enough signatures, and put this on a November ballot. Not my idea of a good time.
Our next speaker is, pardon me, Raleigh Sorrentino and Tom Sundheim on deck.
My name is Raleigh Sorrentino. I live at 4175 Teller Street in Wheat Ridge. And I got a call early this morning from the next speaker for information, and I wish to relinquish my time to that gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrentino. Tom Sundheim and Rachel Holteen on deck.
Good evening. My name's Tom Sundheim. I live at 5601 West 35th Avenue, which is right across from Panorama Park. So I've lived there for 30 years. And so I have some familiarity with the park issues, most of which are very positive. Some, needless to say, parks bring on issues unlike any others. My dog in the fight is a love and a passion for the game of baseball, and I specifically want to speak to the redoing and the redevelopment of Anderson Park and the evolution of the regulation baseball field. It's been there for as long as I can remember. In personal opinion, it's in a great location and should be retained. My involvement here in Wheat Ridge is I was a Little League baseball coach in the JCJBL program at the beginning of the century for 6 years. Enjoyed it. Got great families, great kids, brought a lot of kids into the high school program. Always, worked the end of learning to play the game of baseball, but also the other things that go along with the game of baseball, which is community, family, step up, do the right thing, and trying to raise some young boys and girls, because we did have young ladies on our team as well, about the things that are important in life. From there, my oldest son evolved into Wheat Ridge High School, played there a few years, and I watched and participated to the extent of they used the Anderson Park for practicing and for games, the freshman and the JV program, because to the best of my understanding, Anderson is the #2 field and only second field, which is all we have in our entire community for regulation baseball. So the senior program uses the new facility across from the rec center, and the freshmen and JVs are consolidated to the Anderson Park field. That's where they practice and play. And then the third chapter of my life in the baseball program is I also have participated in the senior baseball program. There's 2 of them in town. MSBL, who I understand has some form of a lease agreement and arrangement with Wheat Ridge over years to utilize, and I'm sure they pay for the facility, where the senior program plays on the Anderson Park field. And I also know of NABA, which is the other senior baseball program, and they have always wanted to utilize the facility, but in speaking with the gentleman down at the program, they said Wheat Ridge has never entered into an agreement where they could use and facilitate the field. I think my point being it's a much-used field and probably underused to the extent of what its potentials could be. The concern I have with the ballpark retains to a number of things, and primarily I'd like to ask the council a few questions. Those questions are why, at the present time, which I understand we're in the process of moving forward with, is the improvement of the site and the location not being considered, which I honestly can't understand, no less believe. And number two would be if the facility were to be moved, where would you move it to? Because what you have at Anderson Park is a perfect location. It's not around residential. There's not concerns with errant balls. There's a parking facility. It's adjoining the rest of the park area, and it complements not only the baseball program, but from what I see in going to the Carnation Festival, that the question I would also ask is where's the lighting going to come from for that festival if in fact the field is not present? Because I know sometimes lighting's an issue, and again, I live right across from the tennis courts at Panorama Park, so I could dress late night lighting to the fullest degree in any conversation. The third question I'd ask is, what is the vision for baseball in our community? I mean, one regulation baseball field in the entire community of Wheat Ridge. You know, there are people, I know the senior programs are champing at the bit to get fields and to facilitate being complimentary as far as maintaining and paying. And I just don't see where one single field, it doesn't even accommodate our high school program. The senior baseball program, they're individuals, men and women, who to the age of 70 participate. So this is not just a 3-4 year high school stint where the activity in regulation baseball, these are people who remain active, play, and actually bring great things to the table. I've been involved for 10, 15 years with both NABA and MSBL. So concerning why that part or piece maybe isn't getting as much attention as it might. Number four, the other question, because I know this is all about utilization and the best utilization, but I would ask all the council members, how many quote-unquote open field areas in Wheat Ridge do we already have? Soccer fields, doggy parks, volleyball at the park, and other games at Little League football practice fields, all of which are very important. But I would say that if you look at what we have and what we don't have, that to not make the regulation ballpark at Anderson a big part of that restoration would be, I think, a grave mistake. Fourth, and I know you, or fifth, let me know, I know you want to get me out of here. I addressed Carnation Festival lighting. It's a big thing, and I know that field lights that event. When I voted for a number of yourselves, as well as the ballot issue 2E for the Anderson Park improvements, nowhere on this proposal for monies, and this kind of strikes a chord with me, but nowhere on this proposal does it say anything about the baseball field not being a part of that facility. Nowhere in this does it say that that's an option that could or could not be included in the future of the Anderson Park. And I think, you know, and I'm familiar with this stuff because we hear all the fake news and we hear all, you know, the politics and the way in which that all goes in a national level. We all see and hear these things. But it's very concerning because the other thing I understand from the powers to be who are pro-baseball, only in the sense of trying to retain a great field that gets great use, is the reality that there was due diligence, I think is a good phraseology. The other is communicating with the community. As far as, I didn't even hear about this. I understand the high school baseball program didn't even hear about this till it was almost water under the dam. And so with due diligence and what's fair and best for our community, I would ask you to look and consider that. I understand that as time moves here, and I request, this is my formal request, which I didn't really think I was going to make a request, but I am, is that you all consider amending the previous park renovation to the Anderson Park facility to include a regulation baseball field. It's very important. The other would be, I would request that there would be a reconsideration of the current proposal that would be done, I think, sometime after April 22nd, which I think is in line with what due process and what is appropriate for council decisions.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry to take a little bit too much time, but it was too many things to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for taking the time.
Our next speaker is Rachel Hulteen and Kim Calamino on deck.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Rachel Hulteen, and I live at 4690 Balsam Street. And I'm here for two purposes tonight. First is I just want to thank Mayor Starker for coming to the Walk with the Mayor this last Monday as part of Heart Healthy Wheat Ridge Week. It was a balmy 11 degrees out and snowing, but we still had 12 people from our community, including some kids that came out. And it was just a great way to show that it doesn't matter what the weather is. We have people who love to get outside and enjoy our great natural spaces. And we have a very hardy mayor who's willing to show up. So thank you. We had a really successful week with over 20 events, and they were really well attended despite bad weather all week. So thank you for that. I'm also here tonight to express my enthusiastic support for the vision that Evergreen Partners has brought forth for the Clear Creek Crossing development. I have taken a really close look at it, and I really believe Wheat Ridge wins when we have robust mixed-use developments like this proposed for our city. I'm really excited by the diversity of land use, which means it's going to bring a diversity of jobs, diversity of local retail, and diversity of housing, all of which our community wins when we bring. Excuse me. And I'm excited to continue being part of the process, and I know there's a lot of people who are really excited. I also know that it's a challenging project. It is something that is of great interest to our city's largest employer, and I'm grateful that the city was willing to give a continuance to the developer so that our whole community can learn more and be engaged before the next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for March 26th. So just looking forward to learning more about what the developer has in mind and continuing to reach as many people in our community as possible so that they can be part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Calamino and Margaret Robinson on deck.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Kim Calamino, C-A-L-O-M-I-N-O, 4070 Dover Street here in Wheat Ridge. I believe Wheat Ridge is poised and ready for and needs a mixed-use development that brings local opportunities for shopping, new housing, and new employment opportunities, and I know that you all believe that as well. I'm here to express my support and commitment to working with you and the community to see that Clear Creek Crossing becomes the kind of development that our community needs and wants. The meeting on February 12th had some missteps, I think, in terms of process, and I'm afraid that it damaged some trust in the community, that there was some transparency issues expressed. I'm sure that you heard from a lot of people. I have those same concerns, and I urge you to try to repair that anxiety, that fear of lack of transparency, missteps in process, and potentially erosion of trust. Because I think more than anything else, as a council, I think you all strive for trust and transparency, and then our citizens need that from you. And in order for this community and the developer to work together to the best interests of what Clear Creek Crossing can be, we need trust, we need transparency, and I urge you to work proactively in that regard, both on the next meeting on March 26th, I believe it is, and potentially in advance of that. I urge you to try to repair any confusion that may have arisen about the process that occurred there. We have great opportunity ahead of us to benefit the community, the citizens, our sustainability, our vibrancy, and I just don't want us to mess that up. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Margaret Robinson with Nicole Carter on deck.
Hi, I'm Margie Robinson. I live at 4 Hillside Drive. I am concerned about homelessness and affordable housing in Wheat Ridge. And after reading the minutes of the Wheat Ridge Housing Authority meeting February 6th, I see that Wheat Ridge is possibly disbanding its housing authority because they don't see a role for it, especially since the city coffers are so low. So I would like to counter this idea by saying that there are lots of ways for a city to be involved in affordable housing in spite of not having money. One way is for the city to send a representative to the monthly meetings of the Heading Home Permanent Supportive Housing Subcommittee. I'm going to repeat that. The Heading Home Permanent Supportive Housing Subcommittee. The other major cities in the Central and North Jeffco all have representatives who come to these meetings every month. A sample of the people who attend these meetings are Amy Dieknicker, CDBG Program Manager for Lakewood, Cindy Pirapan, Community Development Analyst for Golden, Ed Talbot, Arvada Housing Authority, Lori Rosendahl, Jefferson County Housing Authority, Kat Douglas, Community Development Director for Jeffco, Tim Rogers, Chair of Jeffco Planning and Zoning Commission, Metro West Housing Authority, Archway Housing, and so on. So you can see all the other cities have major players in this committee. I myself attend these monthly meetings as the representative of my church, which is involved in affordable housing solutions. And I can say that this Heading Home Permanent Supportive Housing Subcommittee has asked me why nobody from Wheat Ridge comes to these meetings. So I said I would come and find out. The overarching goal of that group is to increase the amount of affordable housing in our county. They are planning tours of affordable housing sites, which I know the city council here did recently, and are developing a toolkit of information about creative financing for affordable housing. They're developing a website called the Jeffco Housing Exchange to look at different ways that affordable housing can be addressed. They are looking for a regional approach. That means Wheat Ridge too. So I think Wheat Ridge needs to have a player in this game. So as Wheat Ridge looks forward to developing its next neighborhood revitalization plan, surely part of that should be developing a long-range affordable housing and homelessness plan. And a good first step would be for someone in our city to join the other leaders in the county as they work on this important issue. So I'm imagining that Mr. Pond, Ms. Dozman, Ms. Davis, who just went to a conference on affordable housing in California, might be very interested in attending these meetings, or at least finding a representative to do that. And you yourselves might have a lot to contribute to that meeting. So my goal tonight is to see if the council can find someone to attend these regular meetings and get on board with these other Jeffco leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nicole Carter, and Kim Ganellis is on deck.
Good evening, Council. My name is Nicole Carter. I live at 2922 Depew Street. I'm here this evening to voice my excitement for the proposed development at Clear Creek Crossing. I would encourage the council members to consider the benefits of this mixed-use development and focus on the needs of the Wheat Ridge residents instead of any outside lobbyist groups that fear that change could do to our community. I just want to be active and note that I am in support of this and that we really need you guys to really be mindful of our needs, as well as, you know, the affected other employers in the area. But I am concerned that what transpired in the last meeting was really not the way that we should be going about this and having the Wheat Ridge residents' voices be heard. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Ganellis and Colin Ferry on deck.
Hi there. Kim Ganellis, 3712 Ames Street, District 1. I would have loved to have been here at the last session with the developer present so that they could actually hear the voices of the Wheat Ridge residents who are so excited about what they are potentially bringing to us. Unfortunately, others have touched on it, and we know that that opportunity was not afforded to them, and they heard a lot of negativity from a lot of outsiders. So I just wanted to go on record as a resident that a lot of us are absolutely thrilled about this idea and this development and the potential progress that they could bring to Wheat Ridge. It's great to see high quality businesses and established employers and progress come and show interest in our town. It's so important. And when we work together to ensure that Wheat Ridge can rise up as a competitive business option in the metro area instead of, as we have all seen so many times, getting passed over for our neighbors who are so similar to us in demographics, location, proximity to Metro Denver, to the heart of Denver. And instead of being passed over, it's so satisfying to see Wheat Ridge actually have, to be in the mix as an option. So I think it's fantastic. Developers are finally realizing the potential that we have here, and they're seeing what we as residents see when we chose to buy our homes here, and chose to send our kids to school here, and chose to, take our recreational activities and keep them in Wheat Ridge. So as a citizen, resident, homeowner, and all that, I welcome Evergreen, and I welcome them with open arms, and I look forward to seeing what they can do for us, what we can do for them, and what they have planned for the future of Wheat Ridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Colin Ferry and John Clark on deck.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for allowing me to speak. I'm a proud homeowner in Wheat Ridge. As the son of a federal judge, I would like to say Colin Ferry. As the son of a federal judge, I would say first off, I realize that there are some issues going on with this community. Beyond that, what matters to me at this point is Clear Creek Crossing. We are given the ability right now to have not only diverse, but developers that will help move this community forward. Right now, it will move us out of stagnation. And what happens when better and newer thoughts come in, our Wheat Ridge wins. There are a variety of businesses coming in right now. And I truly and fully believe, as a homeowner in this community, that we should support the development that's coming in with Clear Creek. I appreciate very much your time, and thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Clark.
How special is that? I am, in fact, John Clark. I live at 4665 Swadley. Looks like I'm about the only District 4 resident here today, out here. There's a couple up here, I know. So I just want to touch on a couple things. I won't be long, trust me. First is, I wanted to talk about property rights real quick, because it seems like these are little hot subjects going around town. So, you hear that term thrown around a lot, property rights. So, and I think we all have property rights. Not just the out-of-towners or the newcomers or the developers or the old-timers. And we all buy properties with the knowledge of zoning and regulations and use compliance and so on. So I was in a conversation a week and a half ago about property rights, and somebody actually asked me, and almost indignantly, well, how would you like it if somebody told you how you can use your property? And I told him, I said, that's fine. That's exactly, when I buy properties, that's exactly what happens. I go into the property knowing what the use is, what the zoning is. So I'm being told all the time what I can do, what my R1, what my R2, what my status is, and what I can and cannot do on my property. So we know that going in. So, just for an example, if there's 8 houses on a street and Larry owns the one on the corner, and they're all the same, and I come down and buy the other 7, can I rip all those houses down and put in something that I want, force some kind of a zoning change, and say, too bad, Larry? Am I trampling on his property rights? Or is he trampling on mine because I own the 7 houses and I own that property now? Is he trampling on my rights by saying, no, 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 that's not what I wanted here. That's not what I signed up for when I bought this house. So it's a very, very delicate subject. Number 2 is I'd like to touch on this little hot mess we call multi-use zoning. And before everybody gets their ire up, I have some time constraints, so I'll just narrow it down to the multi-use neighborhood zoning for tonight. So that's not Clear Creek Crossing. So the language I heard used the other night, I was at a planning meeting last week, and I heard this language used to recommend the approval of a zone change to multi-use neighborhood. Number 1, the proposed zone change will promote the public health, safety, or welfare of the community and does not result in an adverse effect on the surrounding area. Number 2, the proposed zone change is consistent with the goals and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan and the sub-area plan. Number 3, the proposed zone change is consistent with the character of said street. Number 4, the zone change will provide opportunity for reinvestment in the area. And last was number 5, the criteria used to evaluate a zone change supports the request. Now, just real quick, I don't know how that language can be used when the end result of the property is so vague and so optional to the developer. Because I have the list right here. If you want to see it, I have the list.
Mr. Clark, you're
and I know
about at the end of your time,
I know.
so if you'd wrap it up, please.
So there's 29 uses in multi-use neighborhood, plus 3 conditional uses. So if you can honestly say that bullet point number 1 is true for any of these 32 uses, I say no. An assisted living facility, foster care, residential group home, come on guys. Oh, just one real quick, 10 seconds. Hotels, motels, and extended stay lodging. Okay, that's in multi-use neighborhood. Now, if you're going to put that multi-use neighborhood in District 4, you might want to ask Chief Brennan if he wants a hotel over there.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
That concludes all of the citizens who had signed up on the list. Is there anyone here in the hall who has not signed up that would like to speak in this time on any item that is not on the agenda?
You don't know what you need.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If I may, sir, I'd like to, excuse me, respond to one of the speakers.
Council rules provide that you may respond.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sorrentino, I just wanted to let you know that based on our last issue of our tentative future council agendas from February 13th, the Anderson Park baseball field relocation options is an agenda item for the March 5th study session. I don't know if you're aware of that. I don't know for sure yet if it will be there, but the mayor pro tem and also I'm sure the city manager should be able to let us know if that changes. But right now it's tentatively on the agenda, and Mayor pro tem is telling me yes for March 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Let's see, we'll go to approval of the agenda. Is there any changes council wishes to make to the agenda? Then we will proceed. I'm sorry, we're not going to take any more comment right now. Well, Mr. Matthews, if you'd like to repeat.
I'm sorry, I was referring to the gentleman on the baseball field. I can't remember if you spoke to that too. Yeah.
Mr. Sundheim.
I had the wrong gentleman, but it was about the baseball field at Anderson Park. And relocation options are going to be on the agenda for the March 5 study session.
That's 1 week from tonight, right here. Right here at the study session at 6:30 p.m. Thank you. All right, we will move forward with the agenda as presented. Ms. Dozman, would you please introduce item number 1?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill number 05-2018, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 4433 Tabor Street from Agricultural 1A1 to Mixed Use Neighborhood District MUN. At issue, the applicant is requesting approval of a zone change from Agricultural 1A1 to Mixed Use Neighborhood MUN for property located at 4433 Tabor Street. The purpose of the rezoning is to modify and expand the list of permitted uses and to simplify the review and approval process for future redevelopment on the property.
Thank you. Mr. Johnstone, do we have a staff report on this?
Not tonight.
Okay, nothing for tonight. This is an ordinance on first reading. A motion would be in order.
Sir. Hold on just a sec. All right. I move to approve Council Bill number 05-2018, an ordinance approving the rezoning of property located at 4433 Tabor Street from Agricultural 1A1 to Mixed Use Neighborhood MUN on first reading. Order it published. Public hearing set for Monday, March 26, 2018 at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers, and that it take effect 15 days after final publication.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Dozman and a second by Ms. Hoppe. Is there any discussion?
Sir?
Mr. Matthews.
I'm just putting everyone on notice now that I will be against this motion, and we will look forward to talking to you at the second reading.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 7-1 with Councilmember Matthews voting no.
Thank you very much. Item number 2, Mr. Urban, would you introduce item number 2, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bill 06-2018, an ordinance repealing unnecessary code sections in Chapter 19. This ordinance repeals Article 2 of Chapter 19 of the Code of Laws concerning civil procedures for the police department. These procedures are outdated and no longer used, and this is a city code cleanup item.
Thank you. This is ordinance on first reading. A motion would be in order.
I move to approve Council Bill 06-2018, an ordinance repealing unnecessary code sections in Chapter 19 on first reading. Order it published, set for second reading on March 12, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers, and if adopted, that it take effect upon adoption.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the second? Mr. Duran. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Urban and a second by Mr. Duran on item number 2. Is there discussion? Would the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 3, Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 14-2018, a resolution approving the Jefferson County Communication Center Authority Member Services Agreement. The issue Jefferson County Communication Center Authority JEFCOM agreement establishes the terms and conditions upon which JEFCOM will provide E-911 and dispatched radio services to the city of Wheat Ridge. The prior action, Wheat Ridge City Council approved an intergovernmental agreement to provide for a single call taking and dispatch center for police and fire agencies on March 28, 2016. City Council approved a dispatcher transition and license agreement with JEFCOM on December 11th, 2017.
Mr. Johnson, do we have a staff report on this of any type?
Chief Brennan has a brief staff report.
Chief?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is our third agreement with JEFCOM, and this agreement actually gets at the meat of how the center will operate and the services it will provide. So in the initial IGA, it talked about the services that JEFCOM would provide to us in sort of a broad-based, sort of a strategic view. This particular agreement drills down into specific services that we're going to need as a city to have for JEFCOM to provide to us. Those you can find on Exhibit A. The agreement itself lists out a number of different services that they have agreed to provide to every entity, both the fire side and the law enforcement side of the 8 PSAPs that will become part of this center. Exhibit B speaks to their target service levels, and Exhibit C speaks to other target service levels such as CLIA accreditation for law enforcement that they need to meet. So every agency's service level agreement in terms of specific member services looks a little different, but we've sat down and negotiated this. They're able to provide all of the E91 services and the call-taking services that we're going to need provided, in addition to a few other things that are unique to Wheat Ridge.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Donald, do we have any, do you have the sign-up sheet?
I can check. I don't think anyone signed up, though.
Okay, I'll just. Okay, is there anyone here that would like to speak on that issue? Okay, we'll close public comment.
Motion in order?
A motion is in order.
Thank you. I move to approve resolution number 14-2018, a resolution approving the Jefferson County Communication Center Authority Member Services Agreement.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Ms. Dozman. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, clerk, will you please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 4. Mr. Fitzgerald, would you introduce item number 4, please?
This is resolution number 12-2018, a resolution concerning the proposed redevelopment within the Applewood Shopping Center for the development of a Hacienda Colorado restaurant and authorizing a cooperation agreement in connection therewith. Issue. Renewal Wheat Ridge, the Urban Renewal Authority for the City of Wheat Ridge, negotiated a redevelopment agreement with U.S. Retail Partners for the redevelopment of a site within the Applewood Shopping Center for the development of a Hacienda Colorado restaurant. U.S. Retailers has identified a financial gap in the project of $1,015,000. Renewal Wheat Ridge will authorize the property and sale tax increment generated by the project to repay the obligation. Council is asked to approve a cooperation agreement that details the intent of the proceedings and obligations of both parties as it relates to the collection of funds.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do we have a staff presentation on this?
Yes, Steve Art, our Economic Development and Urban Renewal Manager, is here to give you a brief update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnstone, members of the council. Steve Art, Economic Development Manager and Executive Director of the Urban Renewal Authority. As Mr. Councilmember Fitzgerald just presented to you, we are before you tonight to ask for the execution of a cooperation agreement between the Wheat Ridge Urban Renewal Authority and the City Council. This deals with a redevelopment agreement that was passed by the Redevelopment Authority, the Urban Renewal Authority, on February 6th of this year, authorizing a tax increment financing agreement for the construction of a new Hacienda Colorado restaurant. This restaurant will be constructed in the Applewood Shopping Center along Youngfield Boulevard in the place of what currently sits the drive-through area that was of the first, the Wells Fargo Bank along Youngfield. It will construct about a 9,500 square foot restaurant, 2 stories in this restaurant. So on the second story will be an outdoor patio that patrons will be able to sit out there and enjoy a nice fresh margarita during the sunshine and have a nice Mexican dinner. Tex-Mex, Mountain Tex-Mex is what they label themselves as. City Council did receive a study session on May of last year regarding this development of this new restaurant, and at that meeting they did give a consensus for us to move forward with the restaurant. At the meeting of February 20th, our Urban Renewal Authority heard a study from the developer, as well as Economic and Planning Systems, EPS, who did a financial analysis of the performa, and the performa did show there was a gap in the financial feasibility of building this restaurant at the site of about $1,015,000. The Urban Authority, as I did mention, did approve that redevelopment agreement at that meeting. Part of what goes on is we are authorizing to give 100% of the property tax back to the project, as well as 1.5 cents of the city's local 3-cent sales tax. As you well know, sales tax is presented from the business to the city. We need a mechanism then to pass it from the city back to the Urban Renewal Authority. And that's what this cooperation agreement tonight will do. It will authorize the city to pass on 1.5 cents of its 3-cent sales tax back to the Urban Renewal Authority until such time as that debt obligation is paid off, or August 31st of 2031. With that, I do have the developer here tonight from Regency Center, Will Damrith. If you would like to hear from him regarding the restaurant, I think you'll find that it's very unique. It's not going to be one of their cookie-cutter restaurants because of some site limitations within the development area. They have to individually detail this restaurant for that site. So I think you're going to see a very unique Hacienda Colorado on this site. We also have Tim Morzell from Economic and Planning Systems here tonight if you have any questions about the finances of the deal. With that, I would ask that you do extend the resolution for tonight and approve this cooperation agreement. Thank you, Council.
Would the applicant, or would the council like to hear from the applicant? The council would like to hear from the applicant if he's here and would like to say a few words and see if we generate any questions. And if you would just introduce yourself, please, and give your address.
Good evening. My name's Will Damrath.
Would you spell that for us, too?
D-A-M-R-A-T-H. I'm the market officer for Regency Centers. The address is 8480 East Orchard Road in Greenwood Village. Thanks for having me tonight. And I've made a few presentations. As you can see, if you've been out to Applewood, things are starting to come together. I like to talk about our vision as happening in stages. It's probably been 5 or 6 years of work, culminated with a new Starbucks, a new King Soopers Fuel Center. The next phase we're excited about is a new lease with Hacienda Colorado, which is a local business. They have 5 locations in Colorado. You know, one of the things that really gives me some confidence with the concept and delivering that here is, you know, it's not another Taco Bell. This is a local business. You know, just hearing the residents here speak, they're very articulate, they're very opinionated. We feel like this level of quality restaurant, but for some assistance with a 40-year-old plus center with a lot of vacant buildings and infrastructure that's failing and drainage work we have to do, we wouldn't be able to deliver. So we're really excited to proceed. We're in design development. That'll be coming to staff for review shortly. The current schedule looks like we'll be under construction, you know, hopefully for an opening next summer. It's going to be a beautiful building. I've seen some concepts so far, and you know, the views are outstanding, and we're excited to get that piece in place along with now a vacant Walmart, and we're working currently with 5 prospective retail tenants for 4 spaces in the building. I can't name any of them yet, but we're excited to be working on that as well and to get that center to its full potential. So if you guys have any specific questions, I'm glad to.
Thank you. Do we have questions of staff or the applicant? Mr. Matthews.
Thank you. I have a question of staff. Could you tell me, please, how long have you been the executive director of Renewal Wheat Ridge?
4 years, I believe it is.
Okay, and who was the previous executive director?
The city manager, Patrick Goff.
And how did you achieve your position?
There was an agreement between the city and MOU and the Urban Renewal Authority stating that the city manager could not be the executive director.
And so how did you become the executive director? Who appointed you?
The Urban Renewal Authority passed a resolution authorizing me as the executive.
Okay, so could you describe for the people out in the audience the relationship between Renewal Wheat Ridge and the city of Wheat Ridge, and specifically the elected officials of the city of Wheat Ridge?
The city council authorizes and forms the Urban Renewal Authority. It is the Urban Renewal Authorities to fulfill and carry out the wishes of the city council. So they authorize the Urban Renewal Authority plans and the plan areas that are adopted within that.
Okay, do we have any direct control over the Urban Renewal Authority? Are you not a separate corporation?
We are, but we are ultimately here to fulfill the wishes of the city council. You authorize us, you form us, and you approve those plans.
Is it a separate corporation? So
Yes.
501c or whatever.
It is not a no. It is not a corporation, but it is a separate entity from the city council.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Fitzgerald.
Mr. Art, going back to the agreement, the financial agreement, how many dollars will the city earn for every $1 the city invests? What do we expect back?
The return is about $4.26 that we're doing, which compares to approximately what we do on all the other projects. They're somewhere between $3 for the one we just approved for the Swiss Flower Cottage, and up to $4 for the corners at Wheat Ridge.
Any other questions? Mr. Dahl, did we have anyone signed up on this?
No one has signed up.
Is anyone? Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this matter? Any other comments from staff? Mr. Fitzgerald, a motion would be in order.
I move to approve resolution number 12-2018, a resolution concerning the proposed redevelopment within the Applewood Shopping Center for the development of a Hacienda Colorado restaurant and authorizing a cooperation agreement in conjunction therewith.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
A motion made by Mr. Fitzgerald, second by Ms. Hoppy. Do we have a discussion on the motion? Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion to table prepared. I have a copy here for the city clerk. I move that we table agenda item number 4 concerning the Hacienda TIF.
Mr. Matthews, we already have a motion on the table.
And I am moving to amend the motion.
Oh, you're moving an amendment, not another motion?
Yes.
So you're, okay.
I'm sorry, it's an amendment to table. I move that we table agenda item number 4 concerning the Hacienda TIF until Renewal Wheat Ridge rescinds the contract language granting Renewal Wheat Ridge the right to continue to receive TIF proceeds after the public investment is paid, and that right that continued until 2040. That the Wheat Ridge Renewal Wheat Ridge would not receive the money going on through until 2040.
And that's the year 2040?
Yes.
And is there a second to the motion to amend to table?
I will second that, but can you repeat it again, please?
Certainly, I'm sorry. I was trying to clear it up again, and then I messed it all up, so I'll just do it as I wrote it. I move that we table agenda item number 4 concerning the Hacienda TIF until Renewal Wheat Ridge rescinds the contract language granting Renewal Wheat Ridge the right to continue to receive TIF proceeds until 2040 after the public investment is paid.
Okay, so we have a motion to table by Mr. Matthews and a second by Ms. Duran. Do we have discussion on the motion?
Go ahead.
Well, let's go to Mr. Pond.
Thank you. Just for clarification, just so we kind of know what we're reacting to, it looks like it's the property tax that you're referring to, since it looks, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on this, that Renewal Wheat Ridge is rescinding its portion of the sales tax and back to the city. Is that correct?
Mr. Matthews?
Yes, and by the way, regarding the second paragraph there on the sales tax, I assume Mr. Dahl or somebody should take a look at the language there. It's a little confusing. The grammar's a little bit off. My position on this is I welcome the Hacienda people here, and for the developer, I wish you well. And although I don't really care for TIFs, I understand the political climate that we live in and the development environment that we have right now. The portion of this motion that I against is where after the initial investment for the public improvements is paid for, which they think will be in 10 to 12 years, they want to, the Renewal Wheat Ridge wants to continue to collect the property tax, their portion of the TIF property tax, until the year 2040. And I don't believe that that money should be taken away from the citizens and buried in a sub-bureaucracy that is not fully a part of the city, where there's no direct elected official oversight. That's the part I'm objecting to.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Mr. Art, a question. How is Renewal Wheat Ridge funded for new projects?
Through the increment.
So the tax money that would be provided, the sales tax money that would be provided in this case, will go to fund Renewal Wheat Ridge and thus new projects in the future.
I just need you, Renewal Wheat Ridge really has no overhead. We have no paid staff. So 100% of that half of the sales tax we're receiving is going to pay back the project. So is 100% of the property tax. Once we're finished paying off that debt obligation of $1,015,000, we will return the half cent back to the city, and we will continue receiving the property tax. That property tax is going to allow us to do additional projects throughout that urban renewal plan area that otherwise could not be done. We put in the stoplight. We paid for a large portion of the stoplight that's going on at Xenon and 32nd. We are going to be assisting Circle K with some development issues they're having with theirs. So there's other things that we're doing. We pay for the street lights on 38th Avenue. So that additional revenue allows us to do projects that otherwise really would not create any increment, but ultimately improve what we're doing here in the city.
So to summarize, you're saying that that additional money will go to the citizens of Wheat Ridge in terms of benefits provided by Renewal Wheat Ridge.
As I tell people, normally when you pay the property tax, that money can be used anywhere in the county. This money all comes back to the city of Wheat Ridge to be used exclusively in the city of Wheat Ridge within those plan areas. And ultimately, we do answer to the city council. We understand you authorize us to perform our mission, and we talk about that at our meetings. Is this the mission of the city council? And we do have representation of the city council on our Renewal Wheat Ridge board.
Thank you. I have Ms. Duran and then Ms. Davis on deck.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the amount that you're going to get after everything is the amount that's right here, $799,488, correct?
After it's all paid off, yes. Of the property tax, correct.
Okay. And that will go into projects in the city.
Correct.
And those are, I think, you bring those to council anyway. You make us aware what those projects are.
Well, we make you aware of pretty much everything we do that we're spending any significant monies on.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit to me about the sales tax, a little bit of that language that's there, which is a little confusing in that paragraph?
Which?
The one that says sales tax, 50% of annual sales tax increment for approximately 12 years, total amount of $619,795. The paragraph below that. During the first 12 years of the TIF, the city will retain 50% of the sales tax increment in the amount of $619,795. After 8 years, or when the total public investment has been met, Renewal Wheat Ridge will rescinding its portion of the city's sales tax. That's the part I just need clarification on, of the city's sales tax through the life of the TIF 2040 in the amount estimated as $2.9 million. Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. And I apologize. The 8 years should have been the 10 years.
Okay.
We wrote the original staff report, and then the developer came back and said, can we make that till 2031 because we're having some delays in our construction period. We want to just make sure that we're able to capture that entire amount of money that's pledged by Renewal Wheat Ridge. So realistically, the city receives 3 cents of sales tax for every dollar spent. You're going to obligate 1.5 cents back to the Urban Renewal Authority until August of 2031 or until such time as we pay back the developer for that. So if the project is busier than they even imagined and they were able to pay off the debt in 7 years, we would stop receiving it and the city would then receive back the other 1.5 cents.
Okay.
If 2031 comes along and for some reason it hasn't performed as well as they thought and they haven't created the $1,015,000, it stops then. We don't come back to you and say, hey, look, we need another 3 years to pay for that. No, it ends on 2031 automatically.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. One other real quick question. It looks like we're going to use Excel's 1% fund to underground.
Complete separate project. We just wanted to put that in there, so I didn't let you finish. I apologize.
What was that? I'm sorry.
I did not let you finish. I apologize. So.
Just jump right in there, Steve. Go right
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I think you know my question. Are we going to be able to underground the cabling and phone lines?
So certainly that was the reason we talked to Excel about utilizing the 1% fund. And for people that may not know, every time you pay a utility bill, 1% of that you pay to Excel goes into a special fund that we can use to underground utilities. One of the things when Hacienda came in and said, we want to build this 2-story restaurant that overlooks, Table Mountain, overlooks the beautiful vistas that we have, is we don't want our customers staring at these telephone lines that are coming along there, Comcast line, CenturyLink, that's all along there. And so we said, well, there's a couple of ways we can do it, and one of those is that we have a fund, that 1% fund, and it has a little over 800,000, I believe, in it right now, Mr. Johnstone, correct? So we started working with Excel to do that. That project will come to you as a city council for approval to use that fund. We just think it's a great, great project. It's our busiest shopping center in town, largest sales tax producer. We're trying to bring in a much higher quality tenants into there. We think the Hacienda Colorado is a start. I believe the tenants that Will talked about are going to bring a higher quality to that center. And so we want to create a nicer center with what's going to be going on at the Walmart building down there, the improvements to the parking lot, the improvements to 38th Avenue, street lights being put in there, the underground. It's just going to be a lot friendlier center to access for our residents.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Davis?
I won't be supporting the amendment, and I think I just wanted to mirror a little bit of what Steve has said. I think that the Renewal Wheat Ridge has been very transparent on what they've done with that additional funds, and it does go back to the investments back in the community, the street light that's going on Youngsfield, again, the work that's being done over by the Circle K. I think I had even recommended that when we were looking at the replacement of the streetlights on 38th Avenue, I had even recommended that it's like, why don't we hit up Renewal Wheat Ridge because they've got the money. Let's not, the additional money that we needed to make sure they all looked alike. We were talking about having the city pay for it, and I recommended that we go ask Renewal Wheat Ridge. I think the other thing is we did ask for the tax dollars with Wheat Ridge Cyclery. We asked for that tax dollar period to end early and that come back to the city, and Renewal Wheat Ridge did allow that as well. So I think at any time the city has gone back to Renewal Wheat Ridge and asked for that time period to end early, and Renewal Wheat Ridge and the city has had that collaborative type of relationship, that it's not secretive or it's been very collaborative, that they're working together and using those funds for the improvements of our community. And I think that's the ultimate goal, is to make sure that we can use those improvements for our community, if it's sidewalks or street lights and those types of things. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I think how it's written is fair, and it's to use these tools to benefit our citizens and our community, and it is something that we have in the past gone back and asked for revisions, and Renewal Wheat Ridge has always been good enough to say, yes, we can go back and do that. And I think we've seen that with the Wheat Ridge Cyclery agreement with the taxes. I think that was even just as early as last year. So I won't be supporting that amendment.
Thank you. Additional discussion on the amendment? I don't see, Mr. Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Art, I appreciate very much that in this particular agreement, you have rescinded the procedure of keeping the sales tax coming into Renewal Wheat Ridge, because that is all Wheat Ridge sales tax money. And I appreciate very much that you're only addressing the property tax here. I see in the Wheat Ridge Cyclery instance, Renewal Wheat Ridge was keeping the sales tax portion of the TIF and was going to keep it on. I believe Wheat Ridge Cyclery paid off their their obligation is 7 years, and Renewal Wheat Ridge was going to keep the sales tax portion of that money for another 18 years until 2E came along, and the city didn't know how to break that out because that money couldn't go into 2E, and that's when they asked everybody to change the agreement, and you agreed to rescind then any further sales tax income off of Wheat Ridge Cyclery. The reason that you had the money is because you were collecting it from sales tax, and my objection is that there is a second layer of bureaucracy that goes on here, and I think the people deserve to know what happens, that when we do a TIF, and they want to take 10 years to repay that public improvement, that it doesn't always automatically end when that obligation is paid up. That at times some of these agreements are written so that even the sales tax goes on for another 25 years or whatever, or 15 years, and that money goes to Renewal Wheat Ridge. And I just object to this second layer of bureaucracy. And that's a lot of what I'm trying to accomplish right now is for all the people that are watching so they know what's going on. The other problem here is even though you're keeping the property taxes, we end up in a situation where that property tax money would be going to other entities, our fire districts, our schools, and what have you. And if that doesn't go there, then all of a sudden they come to us and ask for a tax raise, as happened last election, where Jefferson County Schools wanted more money. So we need to be aware that there is a tipping point here. But I do appreciate the fact that you're not taking the sales tax and didn't ask for it in this instance.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews.
And I do appreciate the development. My problem is not with the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, so will the clerk please poll the council on the amendment to table?
The motion fails 2-6 with council members Dozeman, Davis, Pond, Fitzgerald, Hoppy, and Duran voting no.
Okay, so the amendment has failed. We are now back on the motion that was made by Mr. Fitzgerald and seconded by Ms. Hoppy to approve item number 4. Is there further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Urban.
I just had one lingering question regarding the underground of utilities and that $425,000 that's being expended out of that fund. In the calculations that were made, how come we're not going to be refilling that fund through this TIF?
That would be a question that you would ask your city manager. It potentially is TIF eligible, but again, it would extend us having to come and extending the sales tax that we would be using from that. The funds are available in that fund. That's specifically what it is set aside for, the 1% fund to underground utilities. So the city manager made that determination that he'd rather use the 1% fund than TIF funds, because we don't want to extend that TIF even longer.
Sure, it looks as though at least with the property taxes, there's going to be an additional set amount of revenue past that time period that would be greater than that 425. So why wouldn't we replenish that in some way?
Again, I would encourage, I wish the city manager was here tonight. That was his call to utilize the 1% fund, of which he will be coming forward to you at a future date to talk to you about that project.
Okay, and I guess, do we have any sort of understanding as it relates to why this particular project is worth half of that fund's allocation, or is there other projects within the city that would be better suited for use of those funds, or how do we determine this project is the best for that undergrounding?
Well, I think we determined that this is the highest sales tax producing shopping center in our city. We want to make sure that it stays up with the times. We believe by undergrounding the utilities there, That would benefit that shopping center. It's not the only place we're looking at utilizing those. Around the Kipling Ridge Shopping Center, the Sprouts Shopping Center, directly across the street, Circle K will be doing a redevelopment of their site. We are investigating and actually have plans drawn up to underground the utilities there. So we start to create a vibrant neighborhood there as well as the Applewood Shopping Center. That's part of what urban renewal does. It starts to revive everything else around it by using those excess revenues in TIF. Whether it's the council's decision to ask urban renewal at some point to fund the undergrounding of it, I'm certainly sure urban renewal would be more than happy to look at that. I don't think we should make it part of this deal because it's kind of a separate portion. It's undergrounding around the entire shopping center. But I think the Urban Renewal Authority would be more than happy to look at that and have those discussions with you about whether it's appropriate for the 1% fund or whether it's appropriate for urban renewal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have additional discussion on the motion? Seeing none, would the clerk please poll the council on the motion?
Oh, did I clear it?
You did.
Okay. All right, this better not say 2 to 6. Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Item number 5. Mr. Matthews, would you introduce item number 5, please?
Yes. My computer just froze just a sec. There we go. Item 5 is motion to award the 2018 crack seal project and subsequent payments to Precise Striping, LLC, Frederick, Colorado, in the amount of $126,990, with a contingency amount of $6,350, and authorize the Director of Public Works to issue change orders up to a total contract and contingency amount of $133,340. At issue, each year the city conducts crack sealing on selected streets as part of the ongoing preventive maintenance program. The 2018 crack seal project will provide street maintenance throughout the city by priority.
Thank you. Mr. Johnstone, do we have any staff presentation on this item?
We don't have a presentation, but Scott Brink, our city's Public Works Director, is here to answer any questions.
Okay. Mr. Matthews, why don't we get a motion? Well, let's see. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this issue? No one signed up. Okay, thank you. Mr. Matthews, let's get a motion on the floor.
I move to award the 2018 crack seal project and approve subsequent payments to Precise Striping, LLC, Frederick, Colorado, in the amount of $126,990, with a contingency amount of $6,350, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to issue change orders up to a total contract and contingency amount of $133,340.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Matthews and a second by Ms. Davis. Now, do we have discussion on the motion? And any questions for staff? Appear to be no questions. Will the clerk, if you're ready, please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy, would you introduce item number 6 for us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 13-2018, a resolution designating the City Hall lobby as the official public notice posting location and the Wheat Ridge Transcript as the official newspaper of general circulation for city publications in 2018. At issue, the state statute requires that each municipality annually establishes the location for posting public notices as well as the newspaper in which notices will be published.
Thank you, Mr. Johnstone. Any presentation on this item?
I don't, unless the clerk does.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this item? Ms. Hoppy, a motion is in order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 13-2018, a resolution designating City Hall lobby as the official public notice location and the Wheat Ridge Transcript as the official newspaper of general circulation for city publications in 2018.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hoppy, a second by Ms. Duran. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the agenda items on our council packet tonight. We will go to city managers' matters. Our city manager is out of town today. Mr. Johnstone, do you have any report for us?
I don't have anything tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The chief is gone. So, Mr. Dahl, city attorney's matters.
Nothing tonight. I know that the city treasurer wants me to weigh in on something he's going to raise, but I'll wait until he raises it.
Well, I guess maybe we'll give him a chance. Mr. DiTullio, do you have anything to raise tonight?
Two things. I'll be quick. So I passed out to you before the meeting the 2E for December, which is updated, and it shows the allocations for professional services, which you had approved in December or late November. So now you'll see where those funds populated. The adjusted column is where council made the adoptions and changes to the budget. Then we have the actual, which was spent in December, and then the year to date. So if you look at some of the professional service lines for all the 2E projects, you'll see that they've been populated. Some of the money has been spent, and some of the money hasn't been spent yet because of where they're at in the pipeline. But I just wanted to refer to under Anderson Park, the master plan, the budget was $150,000, and the council and the city have spent $143,000 and some change. So you're at 96% on the master plan, which that's why I wanted to ask on the March 5th meeting, did you indicate that that was a for the relocation of the field or a redesign of the field of the current master plan?
I believe that the scheduled for the 5th would be a report from Ms. Manwaring as to what other possibilities would be available in the city of Wheat Ridge for a baseball diamond.
Thank you, and I brought that up because some of the gentlemen that spoke earlier were wondering if it was referring to Anderson Park or the relocation of a new location, so thank you for clarifying that. The other thing was, I know 3 council members went to California, talk about smart growth, and Airbnbs came up, and I've brought it up, and some council members have brought up about using the lodging tax on the Airbnbs. So I had talked to Mr. Dahl. I said, what are the options for the treasurer's office to actually implement the lodging tax on Airbnbs, going through the different organizations, like Airbnb, and then also he had mentioned that in Georgetown, some of the treasurer there had actually sent out notices to private parties that were doing Airbnb. So Mr. Dahl had an update on what you'll have to do before I can do anything.
Council, the city has and has had for a long time a lodger's tax, 10% on furnishing rooms, but that's in the hotel, motel, guest house, commercial arena. And the land use code doesn't provide for as a use the commercial renting of homes in private private residential dwellings. As you know, that's now a thing, and a lot of communities are seeing that. I'm sure those rentals are taking place in Wheat Ridge, despite the fact that there's not a land use code use basis for it. I think the reality is that's probably taking place, and different communities are reacting to that in different ways. In some communities, they actually have gone ahead and said, all right, we're going to permit a certain number of these kind of short-term rental uses of otherwise residential dwellings, but we're going to place limits on them. Very often there'll be a limitation on the number of, or the percentage of the single-family residences in a given district. For example, Georgetown's got wards. They have 3 wards similar to the 4 districts here in Wheat Ridge, and they place a percentage limitation on the number of those kinds of rental units that can take place inside a residential home, and they require you to come to the city and get a permit. And when you've used up, when there's 7% or whatever in the given ward, then you're on a waiting list, but you're not able to get a permit until one opens up. You know, Wheat Ridge has something like that on the billboards here in Wheat Ridge. There's 16 billboard spaces, and that's all there are. And when one opens up, then someone else can apply. That's one approach. Clearly, another approach is to stay where you are, which is not, these are not permitted as a permitted land use of a residential dwelling, the commercial renting of rooms in a commercial dwelling, and instead it's just a code enforcement matter. The social policy issue, and then I'll stop, but the social policy issue I think for council to think about, and for which every council wrestles with, is the degree to which the renting of rooms in a residential neighborhood erodes the residential quality of that neighborhood and the expectations of the neighbors. Because if on a given block there's now 3 or 4 homes that are being rented, and there's different traffic, there's people coming and going, it changes the nature of that block, and that's really been what other cities have reacted to. Now they've drawn different lines. It's up to you to draw it. It's not up to me. But I'm telling you that that's one of the social policy concerns that cities have to embrace. From a taxation standpoint, the city can't be in the position of taking taxes or placing a lodge or a sales tax rate on a use that's not legal, because otherwise that's the city really taking revenue source from something that's illegal and kind of participating in that illegal use. So I've advised the treasurer that no, you can't be imposing lodging or sales tax on these uses unless and until they're permitted from a land use code standpoint. And then you have a wide range of choices. You can just say, okay, they're permitted anywhere, all the time, or they're not permitted, or then you have some percentage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Matthews, I'm going to get to you right after I get to our clerk.
I'd like to ask him a question about what he just talked about.
Okay.
I kind of understand what you were just telling me, but I'd like to bring up the urban myth and the reports we see every once in a while about a 10-year-old kid goes out on his front lawn and opens a lemonade stand and gets shut down by the police because he doesn't have a permit. I mean, we've heard those stories circulate about every other summer for as long as I've been alive. How is someone using their home advertising for rooms for rent any different situation where we can't just go in and say you're breaking the codes and don't do it?
Well, if they're advertising for over 30 days, then that's a long-term rental, and that's a permitted use of that home. If they're advertising for 3-day stays or 4-day stays or week stay, and then it's a different group the next week and a different group the next week, different group the next week, and you're the next door neighbor. And I've seen this, and again, I don't take a position on the policy, but I will tell you that I've seen those complaints from those next door neighbors come to you, the elected officials, and then it ends up here. Why are you not protecting me in my neighborhood from this intrusive commercial use? And at some point, you know, as I said, you've got a wide range of saying, you know, that's not something we're gonna worry about. You're able to use your home for whatever purpose you like, as long as it's residential, even if you're renting it. All the way from there to saying no short-term rentals of homes to somewhere in the middle.
I think we're going to have this discussion in 2018, so if we can postpone it until we get it on the docket, that'll be great. Ms. Shaver, do you have any comments for us tonight?
I just wanted to, in connection with item number 6 tonight, I would really encourage the council to pursue having some kind of discussion with the Wheat Ridge transcript. We get precious little coverage, and some of us remember the days when there was always a reporter in the audience, even at study sessions and the city council meetings, to at least have one story that week about something that's going on in the city, and it's just not happening. And we give them our money to publish our legal ads, and are we really getting anything in return? And Mr. DiTullio can remember the time when we sat down with them and said, look, we want some coverage. And they responded. I don't know if they will, but I think it's something that you should do, because things are happening, and people, every once in a while there's an issue that comes up and people say, well, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this. And there are people that get their news from places other than social media. And the news and the little weekly paper is one of them, and I think it deserves to be pursued. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Ms. Duran?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Matthews?
I think I've said enough. I'll defer to Ms. Dozman.
Well, let's go to Ms. Dozman.
Yes, I would just like to remind everyone that Larry Matthews and I are having a District 4 neighborhood meeting tomorrow evening, Tuesday, February 27th, at the Rec Center in Activity Room 2 from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Chief Brennan will give a brief report, and then we will have time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hoppy?
No, thank you.
Ms. Davis?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Urban?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Pond?
It's going fast. Thank you. First of all, I want to acknowledge some of the comments that came through tonight in Right to Speak. Apologize for my absence last week. Had a long scheduled out of town with the family, but appreciate all of the engagement that's been coming through. Obviously, very sensitive to the fact that it's a public hearing process, so look forward to sitting back here and having the discussion, but just want to acknowledge the comments about trust and trying to rebuild the trust and continue to create a transparent and predictable process here so that we can be successful moving forward together. And I want to say that Councilmember Fitzgerald and I will be hosting a coffee with council in District 3 on March 10th at 9:30, and this time we'll be doing it at the Morning Star Senior Living Facility. So we'll put out some more information on that to remind everyone, and you'll see it on the website, but we certainly hope that our friends and constituents in District 3 will join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald?
Two things. I just would like to say to Mrs. Archer, I think she's left, but the survey that we're going to talk about in the study session is a scientific survey, and it will be sent to people who have been scientifically selected to be representative of the city. So not everyone's going to get one, so that we can be sure that the responses we get are scientifically true. So that's one thing. And the other thing about Councilman Pond's meeting and my meeting is I should warn people that we won't be able to discuss Clear Creek Crossing because it's a quasi-judicial matter.
Thank you. I had just a couple of things that I wanted to say. The Environmental Sustainability Committee, which has given us a report, either last week or a couple of weeks ago, has asked me to announce that CPACE, which is an organization that enables owners of eligible commercial and industrial buildings to finance up to 100% of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and water conservation eligible improvements, is having a meeting on Wednesday, February 28th at 10:30 at the Jefferson County Government Center, 100 Jefferson County Parkway. And so that might be some helpful information. Also, I want to thank the Healthy Eating Active Living Coalition for their work over the last week. We had proclaimed Healthy Eating Active Living Week in Wheat Ridge. That's a mouthful. I went on one event myself, a nice walk, and had a great time. And I hope that we had a lot of enjoyment and good health to all of our citizens in Wheat Ridge. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting, and we will start our study session in 10 minutes in this building. Thank you. Study session for the City Council, the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado, for February 26, 2018. And I would like to start, as we typically do, with citizen comment. And I have a list with a number of people on it. B. Holmgren and April Alexander on deck. If you'd like to come to the podium, please give your name and address, and if you would spell the last name for the record.
I'm B. Holmgren, Holmgren, and I live at 636 Kendrick Street in Golden. And I wanted to talk about conversion therapy and how important it is that Wheat Ridge take part in opposing this. So I'd like to read a little bit of a statement by Rebecca Ritchie, the president of the Colorado Psychological Association. The American Psychological Association opposes portrayals of lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual youth and adults as mentally ill due to their sexual orientation, and supports the dissemination of accurate information about sexual orientation and mental health and appropriate interventions in order to counteract bias that is based in ignorance or unfounded beliefs about sexual orientation. That's the official statement of APA, the national and parent organization of the Colorado Psychological Association. So basically, it is a cruel and fraudulent act. It is abusive, it endangers lives, and it drastically damages the quality of life to the people subjected to it. And as a community that wants its members to feel part of the community, I think it's important that Wheat Ridge makes a strong resolution opposing this practice. Thank you.
Thank you. April Alexander and Brianna Titone on deck.
Good evening. My name is Dr. April Alexander. April spelled A-P-R-Y-L, A-L-E-X-A-N-D-E-R. I'm a professor in clinical and forensic psychology here at the University of Denver, and I wanted to speak today a little bit about the resolution to ban conversion therapy. So like our peer just said, conversion therapy is an abusive practice that is used to alter someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. But what we know is that it's actually not a therapeutic technique. It's a practice that is done to treat. Yes.
Would you talk into the mic so that I want to make sure, and you can raise it if it's more comfortable for you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, so it is an abusive technique that is used in order to alter somebody's sexual identity or gender orientation. It has been proven over and over in our research to be ineffective and abusive. Children and adults who undergo these therapeutic, which they're not therapeutic practices, have reported histories of suicidal ideation, depression that have resulted in this practice. Nowhere in any program in kind of clinical psychology, counseling psychology, do they teach conversion therapy. The APA, the American Psychological Association, endorses affirmative therapeutic techniques. So therapeutic techniques that affirm a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, that is supportive in nature. And so it's something that's not even practiced in the field, not recognized in the field, but something that's still occurring as we hear from members of the LGBTQ community. And we've heard this kind of locally from other people's stories. So I'm really advocating for folks to ban this practice, recognize that it is abusive, especially when we are using it with young children, because LGBTQ children face higher rates of suicidal ideation and death by suicide, and it's something that we want to make sure that mental health professionals are practicing more affirming practices for these youth. I do have an article that I published last year in the Psychotherapy Bulletin. It's an APA subjournal that I have to hand out, has a little bit more information on this, but thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much. Brianna Titone and Janet Gund, I believe, on deck.
Hello, good evening. My name is Brianna Titone, T-I-T-O-N-E, and I am from Arvada, 6232 Kilmer Loop. I'm also here today to talk to you about conversion therapy. I was down at the Capitol today. The Advocacy Group 1 Colorado had a lobby day for this particular bill and a few other ones to get citizens with stories to tell to talk to their legislators, because this bill has been on the floor 3 times and it's been killed in Senate committee 3 times. This is the 4th time the bill is going to come to the floor, and you know, we haven't really done anything different. So this year, myself and the Jefferson County LGBTQ Caucus have been going from city to city to try to get cities to put their foot down about this, and to show that, you know, communities need to be open and inclusive, and this is part of what that really means. And Westminster and Edgewater have signed proclamations against this already, and I've spoken with Broomfield as well. Still waiting to hear back from them, but I'm hoping that they will also have a study session to explore this, because this is a really important issue that's important to a lot of people. There were people at the Capitol today from all over the state of Colorado that just want this bill to keep their kids safe from any kids safe from this practice. And it is going on in this state. It's very clandestine. You wouldn't, if you wanted to find somebody that did this kind of stuff, you wouldn't be able to find it in the yellow pages. It's just, you have to know somebody who knows somebody. So there's not a lot of statistics that are going to show that it is happening, but it is happening. And you know, the caucus, our friend, went through this practice when she was young, and she has a lot of problems that have been dealt with from that, including attempts at suicide. And that's not what we want for our youth. So I'm really happy that you're having the study session to explore this and to hear the testimony that we have today, because this is, you know, you're going to be on the right side of history, you know, if you do pass a resolution against this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Janet Gund and Alyssa Hessbrook on deck.
I didn't know what I was doing when I came in and signed up on that sheet. However, I strongly support these people and what they're asking you to do, because I think my biggest deal is, oh, yes, thanks. Janet Gunn, and I live at 12310 West 42nd Avenue. My passion is to alleviate trauma in children, and I can't imagine anything more traumatic than going through this sort of thing. So, go Wheat Ridge.
Thank you. Alyssa Hasbrook.
Hi, Alicia Hassebrook, Hassebroek. I do that often. Thank you, first of all, for your service. I'm the one who gave you the 8-page or so write-up. I did that in about an hour and a half. This is clearly something that is near and dear to my heart, so I apologize if you find typos. But I'm up here representing the children who cannot be here. Today, my partner and I found out or heard about a young woman who attempted suicide last night as a direct result of conversion therapy. And this happened in the Denver metro area, and it's not an unusual day to get news like that. We hear this with some frequency, and you would be surprised. I put that piece of literature together because I had heard that many of you just don't know about this topic. Like many of my neighbors don't know about this, right? We don't know about it until, like in Ohio, you look at the jurisdictions who have passed these conversion therapy bans. You know why Ohio did it? Because kids died. Same with Florida. This is real. If you got into service to make a difference, this is your chance to do it. And it's something as simple simple as passing a proclamation. I can't tell you, well, I can tell you, I could probably go back and read how many emails I got or messages from social media I got from young kids saying thank you for doing that in Westminster. I can't believe that people are actually fighting for us. And these are kids whose parents love them dearly and just want to do the right thing. But sometimes parents don't know how harmful this therapy is. Please, I left my contact information at the end of that literature. Reach out to me if you have questions. Again, it was put together hastily. But I have a lot of answers, and if I don't, I can find those for you, okay? Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you so much. That's all of the people that I had signed up on my list. Is there anyone else in the hall who would like to speak on an issue on the agenda tonight for the study session? Okay, I would like to, we have an order of agenda. Are there any changes that we'd like to make to the order? Ms. Duran?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to move item number 3 up to item number 1.
If there's no objection on the council, we'd like to move item 3 to item 1. Let's do that.
Thank you.
Let's commence on item 3. Ms. Duran, would you introduce this item for us?
Yes, I will. Give me just a second trying to. Do you have that handy? Thank you. At council's request, the topic of conversion therapy is brought before council as a discussion item. Other cities in the area have passed proclamations or resolutions addressing conversion therapy, and attached there is an example of a proclamation from the city of Edgewater. I would like to say, first off, thank you so much for all the testimony this evening. I know it's not easy coming up here and kind of putting your story out there, so thank you so much. And also thank council for putting this on the agenda so quickly. I really appreciate it. I would like to say that I think all of us have been touched in one way or another in this type of situation, whether it's a family member, a friend. And I just can't imagine. The word conversion just sounds so cruel to me. Trying to change somebody's sexual orientation or preference through conversion therapy, electric shock. It's just as if somebody were trying to change the color of my skin because doesn't fit in. That's how I personally see this. So I would really ask council to consider doing a resolution. Proclamation is great, but to me, a resolution has more meat to it. I know we did a resolution signing on to the DREAM Act, so I would like to ask for consideration, a consensus for a resolution to ban conversion therapy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Additional discussion? Mr. Fitzgerald.
I have a question. Mr. Rand, who do you envision writing our letter or proclamation in the city?
I guess staff. Could we reach out to staff to help us do that? That's who I would envision doing that.
Do a resolution. Mr. Pond.
Just a question as I'm looking through the packet, because this topic refers to a sample proclamation, which seems to have 2 pages. But I'm not quite sure that the second page is actually part of the proclamation.
The proclamation is the first page there. The second page is a little background information.
Excellent. So for the record, anyone who might be looking at this online, if this is posted, please understand that the proclamation is only 1 page, not 2 pages. Is that correct? Because there's some.
That's correct.
Okay, I think that's an important point. Thanks.
Mr. Matthews.
I'm a little bit at a loss here and at a dilemma. I had hoped that here at the study session we may have had the other side represented, and I know nothing about it. I hear you talking. I'm not saying you're right, wrong, or indifferent. I just don't know. And if we're going to move this on to a council meeting, I think we ought to make some effort to hear the other side of the argument. I don't know how to do that, and I'm really in a quandary. I can't use the yellow button in this chamber, which is the abstain, because I'm ignorant of the facts. And I'm not discounting what you folks are saying. I just am very leery of voting when I hear just one side of an issue without, and have no clue, no personal experience, no idea what the other side might say in rebuttal.
Additional comments? Ms. Hoppy?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that for 6 years I worked with at-risk youth and in an outreach program. And a lot of the kids that I met with were runaways, but then several were throwaways. And if you don't know what a throwaway is, it means that their parents kicked them out of the house. They threw them away, like the trash. The majority of the reason why their parents threw them away is because they came out to their parents. These youth didn't have a safe place. They didn't feel like they were in an open or inclusive community. And I think that it's important that as a community we stand up and we let them know that we want them to be safe and that we have an open and inclusive community. I think the reason why we don't hear the other side of this is because it's pretty much underground. There were a couple of kids that I worked with and they went to special camps. So it wasn't necessarily called conversion therapy at that point, but it was straight camp is what they sent the kids to. And it's true, and the tactics are ugly. So I'll be supporting this.
Okay. Further discussion on this item. Mr. Urban.
I guess just practically speaking, as it relates to the sample proclamation, that in the city of Edgewater was made by the mayor, and so I'm somewhat confused as to what specifically is being sought here. Is it a resolution with the same language that's being presented in Edgewater, or does that resolution have any sort of teeth to it, or what is the concept behind the resolution?
Well, you know, I think the resolution would express the will and the desires of the council.
Okay, and I guess just going back to the practical applications of this, we've heard both that it's clandestine and not easily identified, but I guess I would ask what specific instances do we have within the city of Wheat Ridge where either this has occurred, or for those that we're seeking to ban from engaging in this practice, are there licensed individuals in the city who engage in these types of activities at the present time? And as it relates to this, I'm just curious, we're asking to oppose something that I'm not sure is currently partaking in the city of Wheat Ridge. And so I'd like to know a little bit more as to whether or not we have licensed counselors or psychiatrists acting in this regard at the present time, or is this just more of a statewide issue that we're taking a stance on?
Mr. Fitzgerald.
I was just going to ask Ms. Duran to speak on that, but I think that there is no licensed person that does this. I'm not an expert in this, but I think this is a religious thing for a certain extent, at least. Is that true? Do you know enough about this to?
We do have a doctor here that could probably answer some of these questions, correct, for us? Can we have her step up and we can?
Certainly, we have an informal. Would you like to come to the podium and perhaps we'd have some questions and you may be able to help us out with some more understanding on this issue, because I think it's a very important issue.
Yeah, I'll try my best. So I know the bill that has been proposed in the Colorado State Legislature, focuses primarily on licensed mental health practitioners. So from narratives of people in the LGBTQ community, it is being practiced in the state of Colorado. Again, I can't tell you who's practicing it. It's very clandestine, as you said. If we were to find that licensed professionals were engaging in this practice, they would be reported to the board and licenses would be stripped. This ban doesn't necessarily target religious practitioners or religious counsel. So that's not the issue that we're kind of considering at this moment. It's more the licensed mental health professionals, licensed mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists who are still continuing this practice.
Thank you. Ms. Dozman.
So what if someone is seeking this kind of therapy and it's not like being put on them? Can they still seek that without their therapist getting in trouble, or how would that work?
This is a really complicated issue because how I see it is that therapists, psychologists, licensed counselors, we're not trained in this. This is not a legitimate practice. It's not an evidence-based practice. So if you were to seek it, if a person were to come to me saying, I want this, that's not a treatment approach. That is not something I can do. So it's a really kind of confusing circumstance that I really don't know how to answer because it's just not a practice.
Yeah, okay, you may, please.
Alicia Hasselbrook again. So the proposed resolution or proclamation only applies to individuals under the age of 18. And that's where the protection, quote unquote protection, right? Because I know the question was raised, what kind of teeth does this have? Again, it's a proclamation or a resolution by you all that you are in opposition to this type of treatment being forced on children. Now, once a child is of age and the child chooses to seek this type of therapy, that may be available. It likely would not be available under the guise of a license in the state of Colorado, okay? Because the local chapter of APA is in opposition to this, as well as the licensing boards. But again, there are individuals who do practice this, individuals who do have licenses, but in some instances, but who practice under the guise other than their license. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you. Additional discussion? Do I have, Ms. Duran?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the clarification. And I think the key here is anyone under the age of 18, right? Okay, correct. And also, just because we don't see it or it doesn't cross our path does not mean it's not happening. You know, we just can't turn the other cheek because it doesn't affect us. It doesn't involve our life, our world, our children. Doesn't mean that we can just ignore it and want someone from the other side to come and speak to us. If they had something to say, I'm sure they would be here. But the bottom line is this is cruel. This is cruel. I can't imagine anybody coming up and trying to say, you know, this is a great thing. This is what we do to children under 18 years of age with electroshock, because this is a positive way to treat our kids. So it just isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews?
If I don't want to get into the gory weeds here about what, I don't even know what the therapy is. And I think you were just referring to electroshock, which to me,
I could go into greater detail.
To me, electroshock is what they do when you've just killed 13 people and you've been in the green room for the last 12 years and you get your last meal. So, I mean, if some of that's going on, I had hoped that electroshock therapy had been discontinued about 100 years ago. So, shades of, you know, Edgar Allan Poe. So, I mean, that's just like I said, I'm not disbelieving you folks. I just have no firm ground to stand on here other than what I just heard there. So I appreciate your letting that much slip out.
Mr. N.
I would like to get a consensus to create a resolution banning conversion therapy in the city of Wheat Ridge.
Well, we have consensus on that, so we will draft up an appropriate resolution and bring that to council.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the people in the audience and the people that spoke on this issue for coming to us with this. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just get a little more direction. We would probably borrow heavily from the proclamation from Edgewater, but turn it into a resolution. We could look at the one from Westminster and see if there's recitals there. I heard specifically maybe two additional substantive things. One, that it would be, as it applies to minors, And two, I think what I heard from some members of the audience is encouraging, I think, the state legislature to do the same. So would that be a desire of council as well, that the resolution would encourage the state legislature to take up this topic in that manner?
Yes, speaking for myself, yes.
Is that, do we have consensus on that?
Consensus.
Yes, we do.
And then one final question would just be, I, like perhaps many of you, am not an expert on this topic, but certainly the communication from Alicia has quite a bit of substance in it. I take it to be true, but I don't know it to be true, right? Is there any desire to use any of that kind of additional substance in a resolution that we present to you?
It would seem to me that we would look at that, and if we generate some good information and clarity on that, then we may incorporate some of that into the resolution.
Okay.
I'd also like to look at Westminster's
Yeah.
also.
We'll do that too.
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Pond?
you.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, I think we should look at adding some of that information, and I would say that the salient point of the proclamation that we see in front of us from Edgewater, obviously, is that this is about preventing future abuses through awareness, right? And so, I think we ought to be honest that a proclamation that that we do here in another session is important. However, it's probably not everything that we need to do, and I do believe that some of the information and maybe even the intent of the proclamation may be our commitment to put out some more awareness, working with Jefferson Health or creating links on our website or something else. So, I mean, to me, I would hope that our proclamation is saying at least what this is in terms of raising awareness and perhaps suggesting some of the ways that we might do that.
Is that,
Being
I see a lot of
proactive,
nods.
yes.
So
Yes.
with that, we'll proceed. Okay, thank you all very much for being here. All right, let us move to item number 1 on our agenda. This is the draft 2018 Citizen Survey. Ms. Lorenz, would you like to help us out with this item?
Sure. So this is our biannual citizen survey, and a couple of the new things in this iteration. The last time this survey was conducted was 2015, and some of the new items this year is an online option sent out to residents where it gives them a code that they can use to complete the survey online or through mail. And just to back up a little bit, that's the survey that's mailed out to randomly selected 3,000 residents. And first they get a letter in the mail that tells them that the survey is coming, and then they get another letter telling them that the survey is coming, and then the survey comes in the mail. And this gives them the option that they can fill it out online or in the mail survey that's sent to them. And another option that we're adding that council can look at this year is a online survey that anyone can take, and that would be something that is the results are kept separately, so it's not the scientific survey that's mailed out to all 3,000, but gives the ability for all residents to take the survey if they want to, and we can give council those results separately. So that's one of the new items. And the copy of the draft survey is in the packet. And the main new section is the policy questions, and there's some policy questions, including questions on homelessness, short-term rentals such as Airbnb, residential building heights, bulk plane, accessory dwelling units, and a question about the environmental sustainability committee topics. So those are some of the new policy questions. One thing that we definitely want to point out is just that the best practice for the survey is for it to be between 5 and 7 pages, and we're at 7 pages, so just something to keep in mind. And Lori Urban from the National Research Center is here to answer any questions specifically on the practices of the survey, and I'm happy to answer any other questions as they come up.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open it up to questions from council. Ms. Duran?
Thank you. I have a few questions. So for the residents, where you said all residents can take the survey, are they required to put their address in there when they do that survey?
Hi. No, they are not required to. The URL will be given to the city to distribute via its communication channels. So on the website, social media, paper, wherever they want to put that link, you can put it on there, and anyone who finds that link can go ahead and take it. Obviously, you're largely communicating with your residents, but there is no obligation to include an address. It is an anonymous survey.
Okay, but that batch is separate from the online choice, mail choice code that you're going to be giving them,
Yes.
correct? Okay. The other question I have is under question number 23, I think it's line 4, where it says require the property owner to live in the house and only rent, room, not the whole house. I think we need to maybe kind of re-clarify that, maybe redo the verbiage there a little bit. Just to clarify that one. On number 27, question number 27, line 4, where it says require the property owner to live in either our main house or ADU. I think that's just a typo. If we should probably fix that. The other thing I wanted to mention is under question number 24, where it talks about residential building heights, kind of going along with some of the questions that Ms. Archer brought up. Can we add in there about support for, or would they support the 25-foot height restriction in the R1C zoning? Or if I have to get a consensus for that to be added. I'm just trying to clarify so that it doesn't seem like we're trying to avoid the question of what we're asked continuously here on council. Just something I want to throw out there. The other question I had too is, are we going to be doing any public outreach regarding ADUs in 2018? A citizen wanted to know about that, and if there was a timeline.
Yeah, I think we're planning to have a discussion on the neighborhood revitalization strategy this year, and in conjunction with that, talk about Airbnb, ADUs, and single stay occupancy, SRO, single night onlys.
Okay, great, but nothing's really going to be implemented until 2019, depending on where we go with the ADUs, correct?
I would, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I guess, do we need to go back to her questions? Do we need to go back, like her one question, like the corrections on the questions, like when she was going to number 23, require the property owner to live in the house and only rent rooms, not the whole house. I think that's a valid question. I think people rent a room.
It's just worded funny. I just think we should just simplify it or clarify it a little bit more.
I think we should have a comma after rooms. Rooms, comma,
Yes.
Not the whole house.
That would work.
Okay.
That would work.
Okay. So if that does with that. Now, on question 24, it seems to me that this is not a leading question. And if we were to sort of digress into other areas about, well, should it be 25 feet, or would you support a 25-foot limit, or would you support a 22-foot limit, or, that seems to be sort of leading to me.
Well, I know we discussed it at a study session, maybe including that in the survey. I'm just trying to find a way to kind of diffuse a situation so we're not looking at, a ballot question or a petition and just addressing it.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
The question about leading, I think, is a valid question. I would like to move question 25 above 24. And the reason for that is to answer Mrs. Archer's complaint that she didn't understand. She had a hard time understanding the survey online. And I think the question 25 in some ways sets up 24. So I would move 25 above 24.
That makes sense. I agree.
Okay. Would we have consensus on that then? Okay, so we have consensus to move question 25 ahead of question 24.
And reword appropriately, I assume.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Ms. Hoppy was next. Mr. Pond was on deck, and after that, Mr. Urban.
So, one question I have is in 25, that's now 24. It reads, in addition to building height regulations, blah, 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 in 2 zone districts in East Wheat Ridge. But the reality is R1C and R3 are not only in East Wheat Ridge. And so I would like to request that we put R1C and R3 and omit the words East Wheat Ridge in there. I'd like to ask for consensus for that.
Comment.
Yeah.
Could we have a comment on that, Mr. Bond?
Yeah, my only problem with that, I think, is I'd rather almost just leave it at 2 zone districts, frankly. I think that you'd almost have to get out of this survey and go study our zoning code to understand what the difference is between those things. To say that we've applied it in 2 zone districts, I think, is about as much information as we can provide without making it confusing. And I'll leave my other comment for my turn.
Okay.
I would agree with that statement.
Okay,
So I would like to ask for consensus that we, in that question, omit East Wheat Ridge. So it would be bulk plain regulations in 2 zone districts, period.
Or 2 zone districts in Wheat Ridge.
In Wheat Ridge.
And delete the word east. Do we have consensus to delete the word east? Okay, we'll delete the word east in former question 25, which is now question 24.
And then my other, and then once you do that, when you change expansion of underneath, under where you get to decide if you support or don't support, expansion of bulk plain regulations to other areas of the city, should we say other areas or should we say zones?
Zones.
So I'd like to get consensus to change that to zones, please.
Okay, do we have consensus to change that to zones? Okay, in former 25, which is now 24, change some word to zones. I can't. Areas to zones, okay.
And then the only other thing I have about this, first off, I'd like to say I like this survey. I think it's just long enough that it's almost annoying, but not annoying, not too annoying that you'd fill it out. I did do a city survey like 3 or 4 years ago, and like it was long. I feel like that one was a real long one that year, and by the time I got to the end, I was like, oh, I might just throw this in the trash. So thank you for keeping that short enough. I have one really, really major concern, and that is offering the separate online survey that will be available to anyone who wishes to participate, and let me be really clear why. There have been several times, and it's not even just this council, there have been councils before us who have done their own surveys or done Survey Monkeys, and then if it doesn't say if somebody opposes what that survey is leading to, then the argument is, but that's not a scientific survey. But then if it's supporting what they want it to support, then the argument is, but I had this many people take the survey. And so I honestly would like to just not do that at all. So that's
We have discussion on that issue. Let's confirm. Mr. Fitzgerald.
I would support that. And I think, there's a weight. You have pros and cons on this issue. For one thing, we want people to feel like they can participate. But on the other hand, I can picture having arguments over which survey is the right survey. If we get this, I think it'd be best just to stay with the representative 3,000 people and forget the other.
Mr. Ann?
And you get what you get with the 3,000 people.
Right.
I was just going to comment that from all the comments we received of people that spoke at the meeting regarding Clear Creek Crossing, a lot of Wheat Ridge citizens felt as if not enough input came in from Wheat Ridge. A lot of it came from outside. So I would tend to agree that I think if we do all or any resident survey coming in, it's going to cloud what we're trying to accomplish here. So I would support that.
Ms. Davis.
I would agree. I think that, I think Mr. Rand made a comment about, are people going to have to put their address and that type of thing. So again, it's kind of like when we did the Create Your 38th, everyone thought people were bussed in and things like that. So people are going to do the same thing. They're going to say, oh, they weren't from Wheat Ridge if it, leans one way or the other. So I would agree. I mean, although we would like to, I want to do a survey. I never get it mailed. So I would like to do it, but I also agree that we probably shouldn't do it online. And then the other thing is, and I'm sure you've noticed this, but on question number 31, you've got a few of the questions that the numbers don't go across. I don't know if you noticed that, but under the Denver Post and then under City of Wheat Ridge social media sites, like the numbers don't go all the way across. So you might have noticed that, but if you didn't, they don't go all the way across.
Thank you. Ms. Dozeman.
Thank you. So if we are not going to offer this online, is there any way that we can increase the number of households that the survey is mailed to? Because I noticed that you said that we have about a 33% participation rate, so it's about 1,000 surveys will actually come in. That's a very small number of people as opposed to our population. So if we're not going to have it open to the public, I would really like a larger sample if possible.
Can I clarify? I'm not asking that we remove the online option for the people who are selected. I'm asking that we remove the option to have a separate survey to anyone who would like to participate, but still keep the online option for the people who are selected, so you can do it online or through the mail.
So our invitation to, or our
That doesn't change your question.
Our solicitation is about 10% of our population, which let's have the staff and our expert sort of opine for us. 10% seems like a pretty substantial sampling.
Lori can speak to why that 3,000 statistical sampling is what it is.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Historically for Wheat Ridge, we have surveyed 3,000 households, and one of the reasons we do that is because we also break the results by council district. We track which district that resident is in. That is it. The survey is still anonymous. We can absolutely increase the sample size, but for all intents and purposes, there's no need for the results to be statistically valid. So we take multiple steps to ensure that the results are going to be representative of your community as a whole, because we know that the people who respond to surveys don't represent the community as a whole. Women, older adults, homeowners, they tend to respond at higher rates to surveys. So we take steps throughout the sampling process, and then on the back end, once we get the results, to make sure that when we look at the data, we can say that these data within a margin of error represent everyone, had we given everybody, every household, an opportunity to participate in the survey. Those kinds of methods include doing a complete random sample, using the United States Postal Service lists to cull those addresses within the community, geocoding those addresses to make sure they're within Wheat Ridge, oversampling multifamily units because they tend to respond at lower rates, and often contain people who also respond at lower rates, younger people, lower income households, those kinds of things. On the back end, we weight the survey data back to the census data, the most recent, usually it's an ACS survey, to make sure that the demographic profile of the residents is representative of the demographic profile of the survey respondents is representative of what we know to exist for adults in the community. And so for example, for the 1,000 surveys, if we get back 1,000 responses, the margin of error around your survey results would be plus or minus 3 percentage points, which is really a great margin of error. Typically 5% is pretty standard in the survey industry, and a lot of the surveys we do for even larger communities, we only mail out 1,600 households to 1,600 households and get back about 400. For example, the larger political polls that you see that are across the United States, they do phone surveys with only about 400 people to represent millions of Americans. So it's all, and they do these other kinds of procedures that help allow them to say that these data are representative. So we take all of these best practices and employ them in the methods that we use for your survey as well. But we can absolutely look into increasing the sample size if that's something that's of interest.
Ms. Bond?
So if I can maybe interpret that a little bit, I would say that there's no statistical need for us to increase the sample size. It isn't going to give us a necessarily lower margin of error or validity to the survey, and so in many cases it would be us, and I don't mean this in the wrong way, it would be us spending more money in order to put more surveys into more people's hands so that they feel like they're being included in this survey. And so if we can calculate what that value is from a communication standpoint, we should. But we should be very clear that it will not create any more, more or less statistical validity. Okay.
Absolutely. That's a great summary. Yes, so it's always a balance of resources, and of course, if we could survey every household in your community, we would totally want to do that, but that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So for example, if we mailed to an additional 1,500 households, so for a total of 4,500, that would be roughly an additional $3,500 to $4,000 to do that. And the return that you would get in the response rate per se, or the number of completed surveys, you're right, you would need to double that number of responses in order to lower your margin of error by 1 point. So to get 2,000 responses, you would have a 2% margin of error as opposed to 1,000, if that helps put it in a little bit more perspective.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions? Mr. Urban?
I think he was before me.
Oh, Mr. Pond, just
That's all right. I'm way too close to you.
That's all right,
I'm in your blind spot.
Yes.
I appreciate the conversation and actually all the work that's done, and I wanted to really, I think, say that on the policy questions, I think they seemed appropriate. I think they covered a lot of the topics that we've talked about. We've wordsmithed some of them and adjusted them in order, and I'm largely okay with how they're shaping up. But I did want to ask, to maybe a little bit of clarification to the point on how we can use some of the questions, and you refer to some questions in the first 20, I think, that are benchmarking to other communities here and nationally, and maybe if you could just call out a couple of those and kind of share those examples, because I do see obviously we're localizing it to the extent that it's asking you, your services in Wheat Ridge, et cetera, but you're using this survey to benchmark to some national things. If you just talk about that a little bit in terms of the design of this.
Sure, absolutely. My company, National Research Center, has been in business for over 2 decades, and part of what we have done over those 2 decades is have collected data from resident surveys across the country for not only surveys that we have conducted, but those that others have conducted. And we have algorithms that we can adjust the survey data to make them more alike. So there's more apples to apples comparisons, because we know that not every question is asked in the same way, data isn't administered in the same way on every survey. So we want to make sure that as best we can, we're making apples to apples comparisons of your ratings to those of other communities across the country. We have over 700 communities, unique communities, that we have included in our national benchmark database. That's one of the sets of comparisons that you have. So for example, on the first few pages, most of the items in question 1, question 4, question 5, question 6, 7, some items in 8, question 9, question 10, some items in question 11, 12 and 13, some items in question 14. You have, I would say, probably close to 70 to 80 items on your survey that we can provide comparisons to. We do a kind of custom set for communities in the Front Range. We have about 30 communities in our database in the Front Range that we can provide comparisons for most of these questions. And with those comparisons, you'll see a ranking. So the number of communities, usually we don't allow comparisons when there are fewer than 5. So at the least, you would be compared to 5 communities. At the most, for the Front Range, you'd be compared to 30. And you'll see how you rank among them, as well as a comparison to that benchmark, a statistical comparison where we look at your rating compared to that benchmark rating. That's an average of the ratings in those communities for a particular item, for example, overall quality of life. And we'll say that based on the margin of error for your results, you're statistically similar, you're statistically above, higher than that benchmark, or you're statistically lower than that benchmark. So it provides you with a little bit of guidance when you're looking at the multitude of trend data that you have, and you have an item that's trending down, and is that, bad for wheat ridge? You can look at your benchmark, and if you're similar to or above, maybe that's not something you focus on right now. Maybe that's something you pay attention to for the next iteration. So it helps provide additional context to give meaning to your results. Does that help?
Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions are related to the city government and employees section. I guess not just related to this section, but overall, there seems to be somewhat of a back and forth with the phrase Wheat Ridge versus City of Wheat Ridge, or City of Wheat Ridge, or Wheat Ridge City Government, and I'm confused as to why we use one phrase in one area and the City of Wheat Ridge in another area. So as it relates to the entire survey, I think we should come up with one descriptor of the entity and use that across the board versus flipping back and forth to provide some continuity, unless there's a reason for that. But then the second thing in this specific section, number 12, it asks, in the last 12 months, have you had any in-person phone call or email contact with a City of Wheat Ridge employee? It may be beneficial in that specific question to ask any City of Wheat Ridge employee or officer to help people understand that our officers are also employees of the city, and that it might jog their memory as it relates to interacting with an officer versus a city employee. But the specific placement of number 12 ahead of these other two questions, 10 and 11, seems a bit of a cart before the horse, in that if a person's had no contact with the city whatsoever, we're asking them how is the city government performing. Seems to be sort of a why are we asking them how well we're performing if they've never spoken with a city employee to begin with?
Well, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, I can, absolutely. So the reason that question 12 is after question 10 and 11, is that questions 10 and 11, we want to ask of everyone, because even if they haven't had an interaction with you, they may have had a neighbor who has, or they may have some sort of perception. So this survey is largely a perception survey, and we want to know people's opinion whether or not they've had specific dealings with certain aspects. And if they didn't and they don't feel comfortable answering that, they can always select don't know. And so I would say for question 10, we have very few people who say don't know, because they've had some interaction or have some opinion about the performance of the government, whether that's based on the way their services are delivered. It could be that. With question 11, we definitely see higher proportions of people saying don't know for certain items. And I would say that's would probably be quality of work. Heather might be trying to pull out some of the results from the 2015 survey. But people can select don't know. And when we report the results in the main body of the report, we remove those responses, the don't know responses. We want to show, for the people who had an opinion of any of these items, this is how they rated it. Because when that don't know is a higher proportion, the percentages for those reporting excellent, good, fair, or poor, they change pretty significantly. The full set of frequencies are always presented in the back for everybody who wants to get into the detail, including seeing those don't knows. But we do remove them from the analysis so that you have a better picture of the people who actually have an opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then just my last question as it relates to activities that people participated in the city, number 5. Last item says ridden an RTD bus, and I would ask that we include in that RTD commuter rail or light rail as an element of that, to try to get a handle on how many individuals in the city have actually utilized any commuter or light rail recently, as we begin to see the G line opening.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
I see a number of questions here in which citizens are asked to rate the importance of an entire list of goods. For example, in question 6, there's a list of, 20 goods, such as snow removal, street cleaning, traffic enforcement, animal control. And the citizens are asked to rate importance. I think what we want as a council is information that tells us what's most important to somebody. And in this case, they're not ranking what's important to them and what's more important and what's less important. They could mark all of them as essential, and we would have learned nothing. Is there any way we can get a ranking of what's important?
Absolutely. And luckily, this type of a question, generally, you do get a ranking when you sort it by, usually we sort by what we call percent positive. So the percent of people saying essential or very important. And yes, you're absolutely right that a respondent or a resident can say everything is essential. They can also say everything is not important, or everything but one thing is not important. The thing they care most about is essential. So we do see that there is an essential ranking when we look at the overall results of those importance ratings. And generally, we try to avoid ranking questions because they are very difficult for people to do, especially when there are this many items. I would say at a max, we would say 5. And then for people to actually fill them out correctly, where they don't put a 1, 1, 2, 3, 5 or something like that, is also very challenging and can give you very messy data. So this is a cleaner way. We generally do see things fall out. I would say that often, largely, you see that most things are important. They're rated as essential or very important by most residents. So I would say generally in most communities you see 60% or more saying these are essential or very important. But you still get a sense. Another analyses that we provide, given that we ask quality and we ask people to provide their importance rating, is we look at those ratings and how they intersect. And so we provide kind of a matrix where we look at specifically what we want to see are where do people feel that the service is very important but they give lower quality ratings. And those are potential areas of focus for the city because it can help you see where there's a mismatch in service delivery based on resident perspective. Any other, did that help, or do you have more questions?
I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about that, but I do understand what you're saying when you say that it's messy data when you ask people to rank 1 to 5. I know I've had a hard time making choices in that case sometimes. So I can certainly understand your comment, but I'm not really sure in the end that it's going to all shake out in such a way that we can interpret what's important to our citizens so that we can respond in some way. But I'll trust that it works, so.
Mr. Matthews.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick here because a lot of the stuff I had marked has already been asked. But one of the things that we kind of mark out ourselves on is being kind of a rural atmosphere. You know, and our high school is still known as the Farmers. And is there a way to try and I'm looking here at number 3, where what are your reasons for living in Wheat Ridge? I'm not sure how, in order to not have a leading question, you would try and fit in, you know, do you care for the rural atmosphere, or do you feel like you have a rural atmosphere here? I'd take your advice on how to try and address that issue. You know, why did you move here instead of the Highlands? Well, because we have a rural atmosphere instead of a big city atmosphere. And I'm not sure how you would address that. So if you would consider that around item number 3 or somewhere.
Yeah, Lori's shaking her head yes, that we can figure that out, so we'll
okay,
work on that.
And then
if there's consensus by council, of course.
Consensus to ask people if they want to be farmers? Is it kind of where we want to be? Okay, good. There's consensus on that.
I have bib overalls underneath my tie here.
What's the exact question?
Huh?
I don't get what the question is. Can you clarify that?
I'm trying to find out how important it is that people perceive us as having a rural atmosphere. If that is the major reason people are leaving out of Denver right now is because of the crowded traffic and crowded living conditions. And we've in the past marketed ourselves as being a rural oasis, if you will, in the middle of the chaotic urban big city. And I'm trying to see if we can figure out how important that perception is. If people don't rate it as very important, maybe we need to change our marketing strategy. That's kind of where I'm thinking.
So you want a question asked, did you move to, your reason for moving to Wheat Ridge was because it's a rural area?
Atmosphere.
A rural atmosphere?
Or something to that effect, and I don't want to make it a leading question per se, but.
Are we able to, do you think, address that, Mr. Pond?
Well, good. I'm glad you think you can address that. Honestly, I think that I will take the point about congestion or density or something like that. I would suggest that putting the word rural in will lead to a non-response to that, because I don't think, frankly, we're an inner ring suburb bounded by an interstate highway and several state highways, and so I'm not sure that many people, other than for nostalgic reasons, might actually connect us with rural. But I do think that if we're trying to say, why did you live here, and it had to do with,
I would like to somehow address that density issue, because it kind of fits in with the rural concept, and I don't mind that change in verbiage.
And you think we can address that issue in some way?
Yeah, I can definitely work with staff to wordsmith it. Often we use in other Front Range communities the kind of phrase small town feel. So we could do that if you feel like that, Councilmember Matthews, that gets at your point.
Okay.
Later on, I have density of population too, so that would be great.
Mr. Urban and Ms. Duran on deck.
I think just a little bit more follow-up on that. Question number 3, as you look at these answers, how does, when someone answers, I've always lived here, as an answer to that question, how does that get us further down the road? And you have 2 items here. One is housing and rental costs are affordable, and there's a separate answer, which is cost of living is affordable. So it seems like as much as these are nice answers, what is that answer going to give us as an action point later on? And so that there's 2 items here. I like that the community is forward thinking, and the second one is the growing and diverse community. What's the difference between those 2, and how does one person answering one over the other going to get us where we want to be as far as understanding who our neighbors are and their reason for living here? It just seems sort of vague in its in some of these answers, and I'd like them to be a little bit more concrete, because my job is here. I like the neighborhood. I don't know if those are specific reasons or just sort of too broad for me, but I'd like us to figure out how to narrow that down.
Well, it seems like those would be all, you're able to select any of those attributes that you think are applicable. Ms. Duran was on deck.
I didn't have a question. I was going to ask for a consensus.
Oh, okay. Well, Ms. Hoppy, did you have a question?
Did you have one?
It's related to Mr. Urban, so you go ahead, because you're going backwards to the.
Yes, I'm going
You go ahead.
Okay, I was going to ask for a consensus to add small town feel into, is it question number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Small town feel, sounds good. Okay.
I guess my thing with those 2 statements specifically that, or the 4 specifically that Mr. Urban brought up, is that community being forward-thinking and the growing and diverse community mean 2 totally different things to me. And so I'd prefer that they don't get condensed down to 1, along with also housing and rental rates are affordable and cost of living is affordable. To me, housing and rental rates are different than cost of living. Can I go out and enjoy my community and be able to, in an affordable way? Is cost of living affordable to me? And then housing and rental rates affordable are 2 different things. So I guess those are just that's kind of how I read those 2.
You sort of lost me. So if you thought that housing and rental rates were affordable, but you didn't think cost of living was affordable, you'd check one and not the other? Mm-hmm. So you can select all that apply. Does that sound like we got it right on the, sound like it's good on the survey? Okay. Mr. Matthews.
Had just a couple more things. And I'm looking at question number 29 now, where we're talking about environmental sustainability. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of times we get wish lists from our citizens, and they think it's kind of important that we should do something, but then if we pursue that, we find out they don't want to pay for it. And so I'm trying to figure out here, as of, for instance, like I believe our sustainability committee is still moving towards maybe having like a full-time employee for position on staff. And so is there some way there that we can see, kind of dip our toe in the water and finding out how much they're willing to sacrifice in tax dollars to pursue their wish list?
So actually in an earlier version of this, we had a question above this that said something along the lines of, how important is it for you for the city to fund these initiatives? Or what did it say exactly? But so the answer was just that there was something that kind of got to the funding piece, and it was eliminated just due to space. But if there is consensus for there to be kind of an element gauging citizens' kind of appetite for that type of thing, we can try to figure out how to put that in there, and it would probably require taking something else out.
I could say that one of the things that we've done, I think it's very hard without putting a dollar amount on, for example, each of these things in that list in question 29, for residents to, kind of make those trade-offs, because they don't generally know how much these kinds of things cost, and particularly what they would cost to them. And I think you're absolutely right in asking your question about, are they going to be willing to pay for these things that they want? It's a good question to ask. For another community, we have added just some clarification, and again, it's whether or not the respondent will see that, but basically saying in that STEM in question 29, clarifying that, rate the importance of these things, knowing that there may be a direct cost to you as it relates to these services that are provided. Just saying that generally you're going to have to pay. What that is, we don't know at this moment, and I think based on my conversations with staff that that all is still getting figured out with this newer committee. So I think if there's not more concrete monetary values that we can put on these, it'll be difficult for residents to kind of make those trade-offs. But I think adding that kind of clarification could help put in their minds as they evaluate the importance of things that, okay, I need to be really careful about what I say is essential if that is going to influence my, household expenditures.
Ms. Duran?
So can we put that in the question itself instead of making a separate line item?
Yes, that would go in the wording of question 29. So something to the effect of how important to you, if at all, is that the city focus on each of the following areas of environmental sustainability, with the understanding that there would be, potentially a fee or cost to you to do so. Something like that. And I can work with staff on getting that wording, but it would be something along those lines, but in that question.
Okay, there may or may not be, because some things may not be a cost to us. So
yes.
I want to make sure they understand that it may or may not be.
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I had a question on number 30. It looks like that information sources, all of these are sort of social media choices. Is television and the newspaper not relevant?
So that's actually in the 31 question. That's more of that full list of different ways of getting information. That 30 is really just the social media question.
Okay. Is there a reason you wouldn't say social media?
So in the last survey, so in 2015, it did just say social media, and just with things kind of moving as quickly as they are with social media, we thought it might be useful to break out more social media platforms to get kind of a feel of where our citizens are at on each of them, to know where we should be or where they would like information given to them.
I think that's great. I would just put social media after the word following to use each of the following social media, so it, you know, old guys like me don't look at it and say, well, where's the newspaper? Okay, Mr. Let's see if we can get a consensus going here pretty quick. Mr. Matthews?
Okay, my last two issues here, not issues, but questions, was under demographics at the end. Under D3, please check the appropriate box indicating the type of housing unit in which you live. From having walked many of these neighborhoods, I have observed that we do already have a lot of existing ADUs. And perhaps we should add that as a checkbox. Carriage house type places where there's two families living on the same lot in kind of separate entrance rentals. They're not duplexes, but I'd sure like to see that added maybe here. Even
I would think the word apartment covers
legal
that.
in our city.
I feel like the word apartment covers that.
Okay, consensus on that? Okay.
Well, okay.
So do we have consensus on the survey as we have another one? Mr. Ann?
Yes, I'd like to get a consensus on question number 29, adding may or may not cost. How important to you, if at all, is it that the city focus on each of the following areas of environmental sustainability, knowing that it may or may not cost, or any recommended verbiage you want to put in there? May I get a consensus for that?
Yes.
Okay, looks like we have
great. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Just one more question on 29. One of the items there is encouraging water conservation, and since the city does not provide water, is that valid? Yeah, but you do that from a water district, not from the city. The other thing is, what does energy efficiency for the community mean? To me, I don't understand that.
So this list was actually kind of adapted. The Environmental Sustainability Committee was able to make some recommendations on, we gave them kind of the guidelines, but they made a recommendation on a question for the survey. So these are the topics that they included for the survey. So not all of them are city service topics. So like energy efficiency for the community would be more like the city would focus on promoting Excel program, you know what I mean, something like that. That would be more of a community offering. But if it's something that you think is confusing that people wouldn't understand, we can kind of work through that a little bit more. But I think, yeah, the list is kind of meant to be not necessarily city provided, but city focus on.
Okay. Ms. Hoppy?
I would like to try to find a consensus to move forward with the citizen survey, the draft plus, all changes that were passed by consensus.
Okay. We have consensus to move forward. Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, we'll go to item number 2. This is glass recycling in Wheat Ridge. Ms. Lorenz, do we have a staff report on this, or? We'll hold just a second. Go ahead. We're rolling on.
Yeah, we just wanted to reach closure on the number of surveys. The question that Ms. Dozman raised regarding the possibility, not for statistical reasons, but for other reasons, whether you'd be interested in adding to that total number of surveys. Lori gave you the numbers, I think, of about, was it $3,500 to add an additional 1,500 surveys.
Well, do we have consensus to?
So I'm just concerned that we only receive about 1,000 surveys back. I mean, I know that we send 10% out, but we're not getting nearly that amount back. So I understand the argument that it's not statistically significant that we increase the number of households, but as far as giving more people the voice, especially when we're discussing this many land use issues, I'm concerned that not enough people are going to have their voices heard. But I hope that everybody that receives a survey answers.
Mr. Pond.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for a few $1,000s, I'm willing to extend it to 1,500, but I do think, with the caveat that understanding that that's largely an effort or a small gesture because we can't make the large gesture to try to include some more people. So,
So I was just kind of addressing the whole situation where we don't want to offer the survey to a larger sample of people, outside of the scientific survey. And I think that a lot of people want to be able to answer this survey. And if we're not going to give them the opportunity, then we can at least say, okay, well, we increase the sample size in order to try to. Okay.
So is there consensus to increase the survey from 3,000 to 4,500 at an approximate cost of $3,000, $5,000?
3,500.
Plus, I have a question.
Is that $3,500?
Yes.
You said 3,000, 5,000. I was like, I'm freaking out. Okay.
We have
That's okay.
Okay. Then Ms. Duran?
Quick question. So how do we get that word out there that these surveys are going to be sent out? Maybe that would help too, if we put it on our website. Do we do that?
Yep, on our website, on social media, in Connections, in the Gazette, in the transcript.
And do we run it on Channel 8?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that was a consensus.
There was consensus on that.
Thank you.
Ken, we just have one more item that we'd like to get clarification on, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
So on question number 5, Mr. Urban discussed having light rail or commuter rail added. And the question I have is just that the opening of the question says in Wheat Ridge in the last 12 months. And it's unlikely, or we could add next time.
I guess just in general, in a commute sense, where someone might be starting their travel in Wheat Ridge in a car, but then driving to the light rail station and then taking it from there. And so just in the context of their commute, they may be engaging in that, but not specifically in Wheat Ridge, but as a matter of their commute, they might.
Okay, so I could see that. So you would change it to following activities in Wheat Ridge commute to a light rail station or a commuter rail station? Is that?
Something like that, I think that would be
Okay.
appropriate, just so that we can differentiate. And I think in subsequent years, as the light rail comes aboard, you would be able to compare these numbers with that to say X percent of Wheat Ridge residents have now begun using rail, but to not have a baseline to start with, you don't really know where we're at right now.
That makes sense to me. Thanks for the clarification.
Thanks for that.
Okay, consensus, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we have consensus on that, yes.
Which question is that, can I ask? For the
Number 5.
Okay. Are we, do you think we're done on item number 1? Okay, thank you. Okay, whenever we're ready, we can move to item number 2. This is glass recycling in Wheat Ridge. Do we have a staff report on this?
Just a brief introduction. Brittany Evans with Clear Intentions. Glass recycling has been in front of City Council before to kind of introduce and discuss glass recycling options that are potential partnership options to give people in Wheat Ridge additional opportunities to recycle glass. She does pours partner specifically with a major bottler who exists in Wheat Ridge as well to provide raw glass for them through her recycling efforts. She has installed one glass recycling station at behind the Wheat Ridge Parks Maintenance Building, so adjacent to Anderson Park. And she's back tonight and patiently waited to present kind of some of the data results from what she's been able to accomplish at that one station, and then also present a proposal to expand the opportunities for glass recycling in Wheat Ridge in partnership with the city. And I'll turn it over to her unless, Carly, you have other, okay.
me back again. Nice to see you all. It's very late, so I hope you don't mind if I stand a little bit since I've been sitting. Okay. So I did bring a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. Yes, I can speak into it. Should I say my name again?
Please, yes.
Okay. Brittany Evans with Clear Intentions, and Clear Intentions address is 56th Street in Downing, so we're not in Wheat Ridge, but we're very excited to see what we can do to work with you guys. And we have, as previously mentioned, already put one station in. This might take several minutes. Good. Well, I actually have little things to check out. How about that? Get some different.
Okay.
Some momentum going here. So these are sample kits of actually some of the products we make with our glass. So we are a glass processor. Clear Intentions is a glass processor. Oh, look at that. Yay, perfect timing. Look at that. So these are just fun to check out. Thank you. So there are two in here. There is a glass sample kit and a glass dust sample kit. So it's basically two product lines, and the dust is really cool. It's more, obviously, sand, powders, things like that, and then you have glass, which is bigger chunks, used in all different kinds of industries. So usually people have a lot of fun checking those out. But I'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully we can get a move on, and I'll be pretty quick for you guys since you've seen a lot of this already, so it's kind of a recap. I don't think this is going to be new information for you. I did get a new proposal for you guys, so I hope you guys got that. Let's see. All right, so Clear Intentions, so minority owned. I am the owner and the founder of Clear Intentions, and we divert glass from landfills and we process it into crushed glass, which is what you're looking at right now. So we are a glass processor who offers hauling services. Now, there's a lot to this of why. Facts of glass recycling, so just kind of a look into this, is, glass is really cool. And it's cool because you can infinitely recycle it, meaning that our great-great-great-great-grandchildren can actually be using the same glass that we are using today if we recycle it correctly. Currently, it's not really happening, so it's really important that we do try to recycle it correctly. And it is one of the only materials that is considered a closed-loop material, meaning that most other materials that we recycle need new virgin mined material to add to it to keep the quality of that material. And glass is one of the only ones that doesn't, which is very, very unique. It also takes 40% less energy to recycle glass than to actually mine for it. That's something the manufacturers love to boast about. So when you talk to anyone who manufactures with glass, they love recycled glass. A cool thing about it is that brand new mined material for glass melts at 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. Recycled glass, because it's already been melted before, melts at 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty neat. Couple of other things. So just in Colorado alone, we are actually discarding 13,000 tons or 26 million pounds a month of glass alone. That is not any other material. That is just glass. And the rate of recycling in Colorado is 1 out of 100 bottles that actually came from Rocky Mountain Bottling Company here in Wheat Ridge. And so that was a pretty sad number. Nobody really likes to see that. And the main use for recycled glass here in Colorado is as landfill cover. So we're not seeing it go back into the economy, which is not what we think of when we think of recycling. We think it's going back into other materials, which is what we want to see happen. So just to recap on what's happening and why. So you have the single stream recycling plan versus a source separated plan. And so the single stream recycling plan is where you can put all of your materials into the same bin. That is your paper, your plastic, your glass. A source separated program is where you have something separated from everything else. So in this case, glass. Now, a great reason for this is that when you get into, so if you look at the pictures A and B, it's a little hard to see on here. I don't know what you guys can see on your computers. So in picture A, that is actually real material that was sent to my facility from a material recycling facility. So this is what happens when you actually put glass in with single stream recycling. It gets compacted in the trucks, and then it contaminates everything else. So it actually decreases your recycling. It decreases any of the quality of other recyclables, and then the glass is ending up in the landfills because it really is trash. And it's very difficult to separate out that glass to clean it up and make it a really useful material. Hence why Waste Management is actually starting to cut glass from their single stream, and they're saying no more. It's ruining our trucks, it's ruining our materials, it's ruining our plants. We don't want it, which is a bummer. But when you recycle it separately, it increases all the recycling rates, and it's also a much higher quality for the glass as well for all the materials. So it's a win-win situation, which is what we really love to see. And this just goes into a couple of the differences between source separated. There's really little to no contamination when you do source separated. It has a higher quality and no loss of materials, so 100% of our glass actually does get saved and used into the economy. And again, 40% less energy. Single stream, again, combined all together, but it does have contamination and it's a lower quality. Another interesting fact is when you put 1 pound of glass in with single stream, it actually contaminates 3 pounds of other material. Any ideas of what 1 pound of glass is? 1 wine bottle, 2 beer bottles. Think of 3 pounds of paper or 3 pounds of plastic. You basically just ruined your whole bin of recyclables, which isn't a pleasant thought. So that's something that kind of blows people's minds away. They're like, oh my gosh, that's really not a good number. A couple of things with our program. So source separated, so we like to kind of go through a yes and no. Like, this is pretty straightforward. You think it would be, but we do a lot of training. So this is big across all of our services, and it's a big thing that I like to push because people just don't know, so it's a foundational point in how we're training people to recycle their glass. Wine bottles, liquor bottles, beer bottles, all colors, does not matter. And then you get into wine glass and drinkware. That also is something that we accept, which a lot of other glass recycling programs don't accept. Jars, food jars, sauce jars, all of that, we also accept that. Once you get into other things like kitchenware and light bulbs, that's a very different type of glass. We are researching and developing with that, but we can't accept it quite yet. Same with window glass. It's a very different chemical composition. Ceramics, not glass. Everyone loves to put ceramics in with glass because it's shiny, I think, and it shatters when it breaks, but it's actually clay. So we really try to push that. And then no plastic bags. So pretty simple. And some cool end products or end markets and products are, that are opening up when you recycle glass the correct way. People are making water bottles and glasses out of it. They make new bottles. They actually use it in aggregate. Sandblasting media is one type of aggregate. Believe it or not, I could tell you right now that we are surrounded by glass. House insulation is all glass, and they would love to use 100% recycled glass if they could, but they can't get their hands on it. Concrete also uses glass as filler. So do our roads, so do our pipeways. Almost everything that we know in construction has glass heavily involved in it. So it's a very interesting material that can be used across the border. It's not just drinkware, it's not just a bottle, but that's what people think. So when you see fiberglass, that is all glass, and most of it is recycled bottle glass as well. So kind of a cool little thing. Apart from that, I'll jump into the programs that I was asked to really focus on tonight. So you have the Glass Valet. I wasn't quite, you know, this is one of our first programs. And this is really for businesses. So one of the big pushes that we get when we're working with cities and municipalities is that they really want to push that. Some places, we're really heavily up in the mountains right now. And some of the things that are happening up there are really big ordinances, and then they're pushing it into the business world pretty heavily, which is a great thing. But if they have, you know, huts that they control, that's where they're really pushing the glass valet. And then other cities are trying to actually really get out to their businesses to really try and be a part of this program in one way or another. So it's really a public outreach thing. It's not so much as like the cities are involved in glass valet unless they have places that they want the glass valet. So it's really, you know, perfect for the bars, restaurants, apartments, condos, event centers, you name it. All of our services come with quarterly glass reports, so we do actually send out how much glass every single location is recycling, and we send it out for the month by month. So we'll actually have 2 years of data if they've been with us that long. And then we also give discounts for that as well. So if a business is participating and they're producing quite a lot of glass and they're keeping it clean, that's a big thing. Then they get discounts on top of it. But then on the opposite side, if they don't keep it clean and they're not training their people very well, they're not participating in our free training programs, there's fees on the opposite end. So you have a positive and negative to try and get them to really pay attention to the right way to recycle glass versus not. Apart from that, it does increase safety because you're keeping broken glass away from people. Since that is a broken thing, it's not hidden, it's not disguised in plastic bags. And it's a pretty affordable, cost-efficient program. It's $5 to $6 a car to pick up, so we're typically saving people a lot of money with that program. Next is the glass stations, and this is the big one for you guys, so we have a lot more information on this one for you. So these are being used actually in a lot of different places. So it's perfect for very high traffic areas, but I will tell you right now that the most successful glass stations that we have are in front of very, very high traffic areas. You're talking grocery stores and fairgrounds and liquor stores. That's our best producing stations. And we also get HOAs and apartments who are now participating in them as well, which is actually really kind of a cool switch up for them. They have that opportunity. And the benefits of this is that it doesn't have to be, unlike roll-offs and recycling centers where you have to have in a lot of cases, a manned area. You have to put a lot of money into those areas and make sure that people are recycling it correctly. It costs a lot of money to run. The stations don't require that. They are made for small, easy, convenient locations that are in high traffic places where people are going on a regular basis. We're all very busy. So even me, I'm an avid recycler, and I can tell you that if I didn't have glass recycling at my company, I don't know where I would go to put glass recycling, because unless it's at my grocery store or a liquor store or a gas station where I go on a regular basis, there's not anything really near me at all. And I'm not going to drive 15 minutes out just to go recycle something and come all the way back. That's 30 minutes out of my way that I don't have. And I'm not the only one, right? We're all very busy people. So that's the point and the purpose of the glass stations. So they are fully enclosed, they are locked, and they're easy access for the public. They're very small footprint. They don't need to be monitored, and we do maintain them and empty them on a weekly basis. So if there is something wrong, and that's after I want to backtrack that a little bit, we do let that gear up too. So it's not like we'll just go empty a bin every single week if it's not producing that glass, but we do maintain them. So if anything were to be wrong with them, our drivers are actually equipped with all of the material they need in their truck to make sure that they are maintained. And if something did happen where the station got destroyed in some way, we actually go and we replace it very quickly. So we have all of that included in the program. We have clear signage on the program, on the stations. It's getting late, so I'm stumbling over my words. So we do have all the training. So you have icons as well as wording to help people understand what to put in these stations and what not to put in the stations, as well as circular holes on the top. So it's not like they can just throw a bag in there. And we're not seeing people disrespect it either because it looks very different. It's not a roll-off. So it looks nice. People love them. They love going to them. I actually had a woman see one of our new roll-offs, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, your Clear Intentions. I go to your glass station all the time." And I'm like, "Oh, that's good. Yeah, how did you know?" You know, and it's because they look so nice. So that's something that we get back quite a bit. It is not a garbage can. People do not look at these and think, roll off, I'm just going to dump a bunch of garbage here. So that's not something that we're seeing, and we've been running this program for over 2 years now. So it's been a very successful program that we've been very excited about. Apart from that, we do have the cleanliness and maintenance, so our drivers also clean up the area too. That is a part of the program. So if there's glass that's on the ground in any way, shape, or form, they do sweep it up. We even put down ice melt in the winter so that people aren't slipping. So they are completely taken care of in every way, shape, and form. And then again, you get quarterly glass reports with the program. So looking at Wheat Ridge specifically, what I did is I went ahead and ran some of our numbers. Now, based on your square mileage and the population that's in Wheat Ridge, you have roughly about 6 places that you would want to put a station location. Now, this is based on the fact that people really do not drive more than 1.5 miles to get to recycling. If they have to drive more than that, most people will not. So if you want the public to engage in recycling programs, it's not like you can put one central location and have the majority of the public participate. It will be the avid recyclers, and that is about it. Or people who are in that area that it's very convenient for them. So this is based off of the ideal location setup. The stars are just an idea. It's a general vicinity of where you would want the stations, placed pretty equally throughout the area, not that it would have to be right there. And then with that, the amount of glass, so I actually worked with the EPA to get specific calculations on how much glass the population would be producing, and that's how we got your numbers. So based on the population, there is about 103 tons per month of glass being discarded here in Wheat Ridge alone, and that's about 206,000 pounds. So with that being said, at the peak point of recycling 25% of your glass, you have 24 stations that you're going to need. So that can gear up. There's a lot of things that, there's always different services. We have bigger services that we can do as well, but that gives you an idea of what you can gear up to. So the program cost is based on doing 6 locations and 24 stations. So you can see the max cost of this. And so the price of it has changed. So we actually dropped the placement fee. So now it's just $100, and it's not per station, it is per location. So if we were to drop 2 stations off at one location, that's just the $100 to drop it there. And then the service fee is $125 flat a month. So we actually lowered that as well and made that pretty simple so that it was a lot easier for people to get engaged with the program. And with that, we end up also putting your logo on the stations and saying thank you for being a glass hero, so people that know who brought the glass stations to them. So this was a really cool thing to see up in the town of Breckenridge. They placed 3 stations just recently, which was really neat to see, and they were pretty stoked about getting it out there to the public and the public knowing that they were doing the right thing. It wasn't a blind program that people didn't know the city is paying for this to get you glass recycling and help push sustainability efforts. So people were pretty excited about it. So apart from that, the next thing that I was asked to bring is kind of, a few different things. One is the numbers of the station that you guys have placed already, the 1 station. So we have 2 numbers based on that. And I know this is a little tricky to read because I was putting in a couple of different lines. So the orange line is Wheat Ridge. So it starts at 277 and now you guys are at 196, 187, so it's dropping a little bit, but you guys are right at the average too. That is not unusual for a station. If you look at the blue line, that's our average for all of our stations. The blue line is the first 6 months of a station's life. You know, you get up to about 400 pounds a month. Now, after the 6 months, that's when you start to really see an increase. If you look at Whole Foods, that's the yellow line. So Whole Foods, this is the, where is this one? I forget where this one is, but it was one of our Whole Foods locations, so I apologize. I grabbed one of the Whole Foods data. So you can see their first month, they got 0 pounds. They didn't get any recycling in their station at all. And then out of, you know, trying to get out to the public saying, hey, this is a station to recycle your glass, they started picking up and gearing up. In their 6th month, you know, their 5th month, they were at 250 pounds, and then they skyrocketed to about 1,200 pounds in their 6th month. Now, that's not the max you can do. The top line, that gray line, that's actually the first 6 months of the first station placed in Estes Park. The reason I put that in there is Estes Park, when they really went out of their way with public outreach. So what I'm trying to show you is how important public outreach is. They went out of their way to get out newsletters and tell people what was going on. They got it on, I believe they got it on utility bills. I couldn't even keep up with everything that they were doing to really get it out to the public that this is how they want to start recycling. So they started with a bang, which was really exciting to see. Now, if you look to the right, graphs, that's the yearly station average. So the blue is your year 1. The orange is year 2, to give you an idea of your average. So again, at the top, that's your average for all of our stations. Year 1, where one station on average pulls in about 5,000 pounds. And then if you look at their 2nd year, it pulls in close to 8,000 pounds. So it doubles pretty quickly, and that's one station. So you can imagine how quickly this starts to add up when you add in 3 stations, 4 stations, 5 stations in very convenient, accessible places for the public. So when you look at a couple of the other ones, so I compared Whole Foods and Estes Park to kind of give you an idea of what you can do versus what's been done in our average. You know, so Whole Foods went from 11,000 pounds their first year all the way up to 20,600 pounds in their 2nd year from one station. Estes blew it out of the water, and they hit 23, almost 24,000 pounds in their first year with one station, needing a 2nd station in their 2nd year in the same location. So it was a really great thing to see. So it gives you an idea of how quickly this can gear up between the 6-month and the 12-month mark. So Wheat Ridge is, again, the first station that you guys have placed. It's right in the average. It's not anything low by any standards. And so I think what we'll start seeing is that once we get into the 5th and 6th month, especially with more outreach, more pushing to the public that this is something that is available to them, you'll really see those numbers increase just like all the rest of the programs or all the rest of the stations that we have out there. Do you guys have any questions on those graphs at all?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have a question for staff. How much outreach have we done in regards to this?
So we have put it on the website and social media and in connections. I believe those are the main places we've done. I'm not sure if we've put it in the Gazette at all or in the transcript, but we have used our outlets.
So what kind of future outreach would you do? Because this is right by my house, and I didn't even realize that it existed, and I follow everything on social media. So, yeah, my only concern is with this graph is we're decreasing every month. So I don't know whether the need is to the extent that you have proposed. So, I mean, that's one of my concerns, especially considering the cost.
Yeah, we can definitely advertise more and kind of ramp up things. But yeah, currently, I don't know how many times we've posted in each of those, so I'm not sure.
Ms. Hoppy?
I also have a question for staff, and that is this, or I'm sorry, this is for you,
Yes.
not staff. Do our numbers include just the one that's open for the public, or is it the one that's open for the public and the one that's in the rec center for the events at the rec center? Is it both? Is the data both of those?
We only have one place for you guys.
We didn't do the rec center. No. I thought we did the rec center. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this is just that one location. And I would also follow up with the other thing about location. So this is in a place that people do not go on a regular basis. So again, location is key. Our biggest places, so Estes Park, put them in their fairgrounds, which seems a little weird, but it's actually in the middle of their town. So it's someplace that people pass all the time. So that is another thing. I would not be discouraged by decreasing numbers because there's a lot of, like I said, Whole Foods. You would expect that one to have skyrocketed from the first moment we put that station out there in their first entire month. They got nothing, absolutely nothing. And then they got 196 pounds, got up to 341 in their second month and decreased as well, and then shot up. So if you see that, you know, the beginning of a station and a public recycling program takes time because people don't realize it's there. Once people realize it's there and they're using it, that comes a little bit later down the road. You know, it's not the first month they realize it's there and they're starting to use it. It's usually 3, 4, 5 months in that then all of a sudden people are starting to notice that it really is something that is used. And I would also say making sure that it's a consistent thing on social media. That would be also very important as well, so that it's coming up quite a bit, because I'm the same way. I follow social media quite a bit, and I don't see some of the things that people post. Like if they post something once, I'm gonna miss it. And it also, you know, so there's a lot of different factors in there that definitely make a difference.
Ms. Hoppy?
Brittany, are any of these, I see in one of your graphics you have what looks like what my recycling container looks like, but it's just for glass. Do you do you do this for, can people order those for their home?
No, we don't currently offer services to homes. And the reason that is because on average, a household will produce maybe 4 pounds a month. Now this is average again, so you have people who are producing a lot more and people who are producing a lot less. But when you're looking at the economies of scale and picking up glass from hauling perspectives and optimizing routes, it is so much more expensive. So it wouldn't be a $5 charge, it would be more like a $20 charge every time we come to pick up. So it's not something that really paid off in the ending. We did try to do residential and it just didn't work out. We had people filling up a cart maybe once a quarter, once every 3 months. And when we have people who really need glass recycling, it's, you know, in their businesses or wherever it is, it's, you know, it became something that the people were like, we'd rather see a glass station put in our park.
Sure. So this is kind of how I feel about this, is that I told my family we are separating glass. And so I put a big container out and we were separating glass, and it was during the holidays. I was super proud of myself. My husband kept saying, you're just gonna get sick of it and you're gonna throw it back in the regular recycle. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I swear, I'm driving it all the way across town because it's not near me. And I did. And then I went to put it in, and I had to put it in one bottle at a time.
Yeah.
Which was not awesome, but I did it, and I was so proud of myself. Well, now, this is what we're doing at my house, because my husband's like, why are you wasting all your time doing it? Let's do it one time, do it big. So now I actually have a recycling container that we've just been putting the glass in. That's why I asked you about that. But I think that the placement of it is really poor. It's behind the building. You can't even see it. The 5 people that I told that day, because I was so proud of myself, were like, where is that? They had no idea. And so I think that this is something that our community would utilize, but I think that we need to get it out there and let them know that it's available, and maybe have one other station is kind of how I'm feeling. I don't see us having 6 right now. I feel like this is something where if you come back to us and you're like, we're actually emptying this 2 or 3 times a week, then that calls for a need. But I think that we could potentially use one more station, and I think that it needs to be visual. So that's where I am with this.
Okay, additional comments? Ms. Duran?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I would like to see one on east side, west side, so we can access it, obviously to be in a really visible place, not behind a building, as you mentioned. Also, I think if we're going to have 2 stations and we're going to move forward with this, we really need to get this out there. Is it on Channel 8? Running on Channel 8, local papers. We can also do some flyers and maybe put them in key places like the rec center, active adult center, places like that, and just, you know, we can all be, I think, proactive in getting the word out there, because I really think this is something that our community wants and will use. So that's what I would like to see. Thank you.
Yeah, I would support that in principle, which is to say, let's maybe look at something that could be convenient on the west side and something that could be convenient on the east side, and that we look to get into this at a slightly higher level than we are right now, but perhaps not to the extent quite yet that you've projected here. I do have a question. I think it may have come up last time. I mean, some of the spaces that we're thinking of, I mean, we were just talking, you know, Applejacks or King Soopers would be a west side location. But of course, it's not necessarily the city property where this item is. Now, we actually had some of those people in tonight, our partners. And so maybe they would feel really kind to us for our generosity to place some units in their development. But I assume it would require us reaching out to them to do that. And is that something that staff would be willing to do and can do? Okay, thanks. So I support it along those lines. Obviously, on the east side of town, maybe it's at another, shopping. Your house? Okay, good. Deal.
Additional comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Urban.
Thank you. And I just had a question for staff as it relates to, for instance, in that instance when Regency would like to place this, how does that fall in line with the code as far as placement of this type of device and without any type of screening or other?
It's a good question. I think we've talked about doing a blanket special use permit. We list recycling centers in most of our commercial zone district as a special use permit, and that's an administrative approval, but that's a mechanism through which we could look at screening or parking or making sure that it's not in an area that's going to have a big noise impact on residential or something like that, but making sure that it's meeting those special use criteria.
So the special use permit would be relative to a particular type of material recycling or all recycling activities?
It's just recycling centers, which this is kind of on the low end of, but is listed as, generally speaking, a special use in commercial zone districts.
And would that suggest how many of those entities could be placed in one location? Or because I'm seeing a situation where you would have glass, you have shoes, you have clothes, you have all types of recycling endeavors on a small footprint, but as they stack together, it becomes a rather large enterprise.
Yeah, no, I think we just look at those cumulative impacts if we thought that were the case. I mean, back in the day when you saw, kind of prior to single stream recycling, when you had to, do all of your recycling by going to a drop center, we don't see as much of that now. Maybe we'll return to that, who knows, but I think here we'd not be anticipating anything but the glass, so it'd be a relatively small footprint.
So then the recycler would seek and receive that special use permit across the city, or would each property owner who's seeking to place this on their property seek that special use permit?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd want to work with clear intentions on the special use permit application with the property owner's consent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Additional questions or comments? Mr. Pond?
Well, maybe ask for consensus to move forward, looking at two stations. And I guess my question, as I'm in the middle of a consensus, is whether it's 2 additional stations or if it's relocating the one, the one that we have currently. But let me just put it out there: 2 additional stations. one east, one west.
Well, there appears to be consensus on that, so I guess we can move forward with that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. That concludes all of the study session items. Is there anything else to come before us? We're adjourned.